Hey guys. This is part 11 of What If Naruto Was Madara's Grandson. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 65, Dark Skies. Senju Compound. How long have they been like that? Tobirama asked, gazing into both Naruto and Hinata, who sat on the ground, in perfect lotus position facing each other. They were looking intently into each other's eyes without making any single movement, not even the slightest of twitches. The odd thing was that they both had their dijutsus activated. Naruto had his manjikyu turned on while Hinata was using her newly awakened eyes. Her light blue eyes clashed against the blood red of the Sharingan. A couple of hours, Itachi replied, giving a side glance to the sitting couple. I see, Tobirama replied flatly and sat down at the table, his eyes never leaving them. How long do you think it has been for them? He asked, noticing a small drop of sweat running down Naruto's face. Time perception changes between users. In my Tsukuyami, 1 second in real life means 24 hours inside my Genjutsu world. As for Naruto, I can't but wonder. I'm severely restrained by my average chakra levels, unlike him, Itachi replied evenly. But both of them have been going at it for hours. They didn't even had lunch. If he shares the same skill as you do with the Tsukuyami, then both of them have been in there for years, Tobirama said, quickly doing the math in his head. Years in a couple of hours. Tobirama was lost in his thoughts when he heard a groan and noticed Naruto had closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Both Naruto and Hinata stood, popping a few joints for all the time they sat on the ground, stiff as boards. He looked towards Hinata and saw her hair shifting back to her dark blue color. Tobirama looked carefully at Hinata. Her posture seemed different. No. It was different. But that could have been for sitting on the ground so many hours. His eyes trailed back to Naruto, who was already at the table, munching on anything he could grab. He took a small read and felt his chakra levels were near the bottom. Naruto had expended all of his chakra in that speed training session. Tobirama wondered. How long? He asked, narrowing his eyes at Naruto. I didn't just use my chakra, Tobi, Naruto replied with a crooked smile. Tobirama groaned once more at the nickname. Naruto had taken to call him Tobi for short, no matter how many times he reminded Naruto that Tobi was once the mask of Fugaku. We emptied Kurama as well, Naruto explained, and Tobirama's eyes widened ever so slightly. If they used the chakra Abijah, then 2 years, Naruto said, and saw Tobirama's jaw drop as well as Itachi's. You have been stuck in your mind for 2 years? Tobirama asked in disbelief. 2 years. That was insane. The amount of chakra required would be staggering. No wonder they drained the Kyuubi. 2 years, 1 month and 24 days. Hinata informed him while Tobirama just shook his head. What did you do in there for so long? Tobirama asked. Mostly training, Hinata replied, munching happily on an apple. I see, Itachi answered neutrally. Anything we need to know? Nope, Naruto grinned. However, Hashirama is no longer the second strongest on our group, Naruto replied, and Tobirama raised his head, looking at Hinata, who looked exactly the same. Then again, for him and Itachi it was only a few hours. Really? Tobirama asked with suspicion. His brother was filled to the brim with chakra, not mention his Mokutan bloodline. Indeed, Hinata answered but said nothing more. Let them wonder, she added in thought. And you? Tobirama asked towards Naruto. What have you been doing in there for 2 years? Preparing for Madara. Next day, Hokage's office. He won't like it, Tsunade commented. She stood next to the windows, hands behind her back as she gazed into the village. The sun coming up in the horizon. I know, Hinata replied softly. How do you know Naruto-kun won't like it? Shizen asked with a frown. She, Hinata and Tsunade were the only ones in the Hokage's office. Even the Umbu were ordered to leave. What we are trying is dangerous and Naruto-kun will know it, Hinata answered with a sigh. But he will understand. We just can't progress any further without him. A single sample requires our absolute attention and take weeks to grow. If we want it ready for the war, we need more time, or Naruto's abilities. Hinata explained and waited for Tsunade to answer. Fine, Tsunade sighed in defeat. Just ease him into it. You know how he gets with the whole war and peace things. Tsunade explained and Hinata nodded in reply, taking the authorization form from the Hokage. Another thing, Tsunade said, stopping Hinata from leaving the office. Don't take too long. I need you and Kakashi to get ready for the Kage meeting. Hinata frowned at Tsunade's words. You are not taking Naruto-kun? She asked. Things are tense between us and Iwagakure. Tsunade sighed, closing her fists behind her back. Naruto is too proud for his own good. Actually, I think you should reconsider. Hinata replied instantly, making Tsunade turn away from window and look at Hinata with a raised eyebrow. He and the Tsuchikage are at each other's throats. I can't allow that to happen if we are to be allied in this war, Tsunade informed her. That is why I think he should heavily reconsider not taking Naruto-kun with you. I spent 2 years with him in our mines and he's humbled quite a bit. Hinata explained. Really? Tsunade asked with amusement. And is that an impartial observation? One thing you should understand about Naruto-kun is that he had never lost before. Hinata began softly. We both had rough times growing up. Naruto-kun pushed himself to his limits every single day to reach the level he is today. It is normal that he takes pride in his abilities since he worked hard for them. Although the early years were hard, Naruto-kun was always had a talent for the shinobi arts. He learned jutsus fairly quickly thanks to his eyes, and his taijutsu and genjutsu grew just as easily. The problem with such talent and power was that he never lost a single battle. Hinata said, and Tsunade raised an eyebrow in surprise. He was never once defeated in battle, and he was never outsmarted either. Then came Madara, who kidnapped me right from beneath his nose. And to make things worse, Naruto couldn't find me afterwards. It shook him. It made him feel weak, frail, and hopeless for the first time. I think he learned a lot of humbleness from that. Hinata finished explained, and Tsunade remained silent. That certainly explained all the anger he had. Tsunade muttered to herself. She looked up towards her apprentice and mused silently in thought. All right. Tsunade conceded, shaking her head at the bright smile on the girl's face. One question though. Tsunade said, and Hinata nodded quite quickly. What exactly were you doing for 2 years in your dreamscapes? Tsunade asked with curiosity. Mostly developing my eyes so I don't have surprises during the war. Hinata shrugged her shoulders. I had time to think about my researches and couple other things. But what you learned, don't you need to train it with your actual body? Tsunade mused out loud. Not really. Hinata replied. Mine and Naruto's body are at our physical peak at the moment. The absolute peak of the human body is around 25, so we just have to wait until there. The things I learned in our minds can easily be applied in the real world without placing too much strain on my eyes. Hinata explained, and Tsunade chuckled softly. Care to share? Tsunade asked shrewdly. Apparently I'm Hamura's transmigrant. Due to Naruto's chakra being injected into my system, it forced my eyes to awaken, hence the white hair and the bones thing. Hinata shrugged her shoulders. She didn't mind her new eyes, but she was still wrapping her mind about the bones. I see. Tsunade replied, walking towards the chair and leaning backwards. Anyway, get going and come back with him once you are finished. Tsunade said. Hinata bowed and walked out of the office. That girl, Tsunade chuckled. She never ceases to amaze me. Indeed, Shizen giggled in reply. With Naruto. Are you serious? Naruto asked in disbelief mixed with surprise and shock. He was staring at the scarecrow of a shinobi standing lazily in front of him. Anko! You are marrying Anko? I thought all you had was a fling. He chucked in disbelief. Now Naruto. Anko may be a bit eccentric, and crazy, twisted, sadistic, and did I mention crazy? Shall I go on? Naruto asked with amusement. I'm a simple man, Naruto. Kakashi sighed and closed his book. I see boobs. I marry them. Kakashi replied, and Naruto's sweat dropped. Well, good luck then, Naruto said after recovering. You are gonna need it by marrying that crazy woman. Naruto laughed in thought. Both Naruto and Kakashi stiffened slightly but quickly relaxed when they felt a spike of chakra. They watched as water started swirling on the previous dry ground and Hinata materialized herself in front of them. Hina-chan. Naruto ran up to her and proceeded to whine about Kakashi getting married with Anko. Congratulations, Kakashi-sensei. Hinata said happily while Kakashi nodded in appreciation, unlike certain blondes. Come now, Hinata. We are all jounin'. Kakashi or Kakashi-senpai is fine. Kakashi answered and Hinata nodded before turning towards Naruto. I need your help. Are you busy? Hinata asked, and Naruto shook his head, wondering what Hinata wanted. Good. Come with me, Hinata said and motioned for him to follow. See ya, Kakashi. Hinata bowed slightly as both walked off. Konoha Hospital. So, where are we going? Naruto asked as both of them stepped into the hospital through the front doors. You will see. Hinata grinned and Naruto followed, wondering what would require of him in the hospital. He always hated hospitals. That damn smell of high-powered cleaners. Nonetheless, he followed her. She made her way through the hospital blocks with practiced ease. Soon enough, Hinata turned on a corner that led to a dead end. Naruto raised an eyebrow as she kept walking until she stood but a few feet from the wall. Naruto's jaw dropped when Hinata placed a hand on the wall, and immediately a small seal flared to life, glowing intermittently for a few seconds. Naruto watched as a small outline appeared in the wall, the size of a simple door. Come, Naruto-kun, Hinata said, breaking Naruto from his stupor. Hinata pushed the wall and it retreated backwards without much effort, sliding to the side. Naruto stepped into the room with trepidation. Where the hell are we going? Naruto was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice a simple elevator standing in the middle of the room. A single Anbu stood next to the doors in perfect position, arms by the side of his body and straight posture. Where are we? Naruto asked with no concealed curiosity. It was a small miracle he managed to hold it so far. We are nearly there. I will tell you when we arrive. Hinata replied and entered the pin code, and the doors opened with a swoosh sound. Hinata stepped inside and Naruto was about to enter as well when the Anbu placed a single arm to stop his movement. Lord Senju does not have clearance to enter this section. The Anbu replied sharply and Naruto turned to Hinata, who blushed in realization. I'm sorry. Here, Hinata stepped out of the elevator and quickly pulled out the form she received from Tsunade. The Anbu looked through the form seconds before it burst into flames and was turned into ash. You may proceed it. The Anbu replied neutrally and returned to his posture. Thanks, Naruto replied awkwardly and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed and he turned towards Hinata expectantly. She felt his eyes on her but ignored him. They were nearly there. Naruto could feel the chakra signatures on the surface getting dimmer and dimmer as the elevator continued on downwards. Suddenly, the elevator stopped and Naruto looked forward as the doors opened and he blasted with white light. Welcome, Naruto-kun, to Orochimaru's greatest creation, Hinata said, but Naruto was barely able to register her words. There was so much white in front of him. White walls, white lights on the ceiling. Orochimaru, Naruto finally processed Hinata's words. What do you mean? He asked as he was led by Hinata through the halls. Naruto looked through the clear glass walls and saw many tables filled with vials and other equipment. He recognized some of the equipment from the basic knowledge he had of biology. They kept walking and took a sharp right until they entered another section of the place. This room had large tanks filled with some type of liquid. Something was floating inside the tanks, connected by tubes to the exterior. Naruto suddenly stopped and placed a hand on Hinata's shoulders. Hinata turned backwards and noticed Naruto's face. Explain, Naruto said more harshly than he intended, but Hinata didn't seem to mind. It seemed that she expected it, in fact. Orochimaru was the founder of all of this. Hinata began, waving her arms. This is a secret division of the Leaf for biological weaponry research. These facilities are perhaps the closest kept secret in the village. I doubt that even Danzo knew of this place, but with his connections it is unclear. This structure has living facilities for the active personnel and support staff to reduce the trips to the surface and lower risk of exposure. Remember that little laboratory you found years ago during your D-rank mission? Hinata asked, and Naruto nodded. That was actually an emergency entrance to this place. It would seem Orochimaru had repurposed that location for his own plans. When he was caught, I think he didn't have time to properly clean up everything. That would explain how you found so much. Hinata mused. He may have overstood his boundaries, but he was a genius, and one of the leading minds in genetic engineering. This was his life's work before he went crazy with the whole immortality thing. Hinata explained and Naruto nodded, following her along the corridors. It was supposed to be a dawn of a new age. All the chakra in the world is meaningless when a simple virus can wipe out a village and leave its wealth intact. Hinata explained and Naruto was already frowning. Isn't chakra enough? Naruto sighed. Does Konoha really need more weapons? But you are wrong though. Naruto thought sadly. If you understood chakra like I do, you would know that chakra is the only absolute. I understand how you feel, Naruto. Hinata replied softly. But don't forget that this village is the military power of the Fire Nation. And while Konoha always had powerful shinobi, we never had the largest armies nor the biggest diversity in bloodlines. However, we always strived in medicine. I suppose I shouldn't be too surprised. But I thought shinobi were resistant to virus and other diseases? Naruto commented out loud. True, Hinata agreed. People with active chakra networks have stronger immune systems so they don't get sick with standard diseases. But we are still humans, Naruto. Even we get sick and die if the disease is strong enough. Hinata explained as both of them stopped in front of a door. I still don't see how I can help. My genetics knowledge is a little rusty. Naruto joked until Hinata pointed forward. Naruto looked at where they stopped in front of a steel door. VIRUS. Naruto read the letters on the door. Viral Investigation and Research Unit Section. Hinata informed him as she stepped forward. The doors opened automatically. This way, Hinata called and Naruto followed until they stood in front of large cylindrical tanks, very similar to the ones he saw on another section of this place. Is that what I think it is? Naruto asked, observing the white blob floating in the liquid. White Setsu, Hinata confirmed. Naruto watched the blob in front of him for confirmation. It was indeed a white Setsu, or at least a few chunks of one. Ever since the Kumo invasion, we have been working on several ways to quickly neutralize them. Actually, that would be a brilliant idea, Naruto replied with a surprised face. Madara's army would be entirely composed by white Setsu. If we could find a poison or something that would target only them, we could dispatch of his army instantly, Naruto said, and Hinata nodded in reply. There are a few snags, however, Hinata said, sitting on a nearby chair and powering on the computer and other equipment. Naruto leaned over Hinata to look at the monitor to watch an array of complex symbols and other stuff that held no meaning to him. We are learning more every day, but I have to say that Setsu clones are one work of art. They are essentially clones of Hashiramas, although their DNA is slightly different since they are not entirely human. Hinata explained, pointing towards the monitor which had a representation of a Zetsu body. They possess nearly all the strengths of Hashirama. They carry the same powerful life force and his healing abilities as well. They are also heavily in tune with nature, being able to literally merge with any substance and allowing them to blend in easily and being virtually undetectable, even for powerful sensors like you and Tobirama. Hinata explained, pointing to several schematics, and Naruto nodded in understanding. They can use the Mokuton, although in a much smaller and weaker scale than Hashirama, thankfully, Hinata said, and Naruto sighed, rubbing his forehead. I expected the Zetsu clones to be nothing but fodder. Naruto groaned. It would appear that Zetsu clones weren't as weak as expected. The Kumo invasion was an eye-opener. Hinata nodded in agreement and returned to her explanation. Since they aren't exactly human, they do not perform much of our bodily functions. They do not require food or even oxygen, instead they draw natural energy for sustenance. Since they draw energy from the earth itself, they do not tire, unlike us. Hinata bit her lip. Hinata replied and stood up, leading Naruto to another table. Their bodies are very durable. Low levels wounds will heal up immediately. To take them down you need extensive trauma, like decapitating them or blowing them to pieces. What about their offensive abilities? Naruto asked, looking backwards to the floating Zetsu on the tank. Besides the Mokuton, their offensive abilities are on the weaker side. Their only reliable ability seems being able to absorb chakra, Hinata said, and Naruto frowned at her words. Like my Rinnegan? Not like that. Hinata shook her head. They cannot negate ninjutsu attacks. However, they can latch onto a person and drain their chakra, and fairly quickly too if we are not careful. Naruto nodded, taking particularly attention to store all these little details. So what do you need me for? I need your Rinnegan abilities. I need you to mature a couple of specimens so that we can try our creations on them, Hinata said, pointing to several vials on the fridge. They seemed to share the same color, but the labels identified the liquid with different strains. Z-virus? Naruto asked with amusement. Z for Zetsu. Not very original, but it will do. Hinata giggled while Naruto shook his head. He walked up to the tanks and placed a single hand on the glass. The Zetsu parts began shaking and suddenly snapped to their right positions. The leg piece went to the bottom while the head stayed at the top. Small white tendrils burst from the head and quickly latched on the remaining body parts, pulling the pieces together, mending the flesh back together into one whole body. Yellow eyes snapped open as Naruto removed his hand. The Zetsu snarled, gulping the liquid, but he didn't seem to mind. The Zetsu punched the tank, but the glass didn't even vibrate. Reinforced glass. They are perfectly safe in there, Hinata commented as she drained the liquid inside the tank. Hinata walked back towards the computer and started typing. Warning, warning! Naruto heard from the speakers. Z-Virus Protocol initialized. Dispersing B strain. Naruto turned back to the tank and saw nothing happening. The Zetsu was still trying his best to break the glass until he suddenly stopped and started convulsing in pain. His skin started blistering as the Zetsu trashed inside the glass cage until he collapsed to the bottom, completely still. Hinata was looking at the report from the computer when the Zetsu opened his eyes and stood up. With a smirk, all the blisters healed, and he began trying to break the glass again. B-strain simulation, failure, the system reported. Oh well, Hinata sighed and stood up. Not like I expected to work in the first try. That would have been too good. Do you know what makes them obey Madara's commands so blindly? Naruto asked with curiosity. Oh, I know that face, Hinata stated with a smirk. What are you plotting inside that devious mind of yours? She asked, watching Naruto remain obvious to her question. I was thinking, what if we could somehow modify this Zetsu? Naruto pointed to the tank behind him. To follow our orders? Then we could simply form our own army of Zetsu and pit it against Madara's. And should we lose, we could always make some more. Naruto explained, but Hinata frowned. I don't think it will work. We just got to work on the Zetsu and have so much more to find out. I don't think it would be wise to risk building an army only for it to turn against us. Hinata explained. You are right. Anyway, how many clones do you need? Naruto asked, looking at the 4 others' tanks. 1 is enough for now. When I manage to end this one, I'll let you know. In the meantime, we need to get ready for the Kage meeting. Hinata explained, placing her lab coat down. I don't think Bachan will let me go. Naruto frowned. No worries. I talked to her and convinced her to give you a second chance. Hinata replied, and Naruto looked up. In a flash, he was next to Hinata, hugging her. Thanks, Hinata-chan. Naruto cheered, spinning her while she laughed. Did I tell you how much I love you? Not today. She pouted. Senju compound. Most of the people living under the roof of the Senju compound were gathered in the living room. Naruto had just geared up and was waiting for Tsunade to arrive so they could departure for the final meeting before the war. No matter how times change, war always finds its way back. Hashirama said sadly, looking down into the floor. All the battles I fought, the union of the clans into villages, and where we go again, this war is different. Naruto replied with a smile. Hashirama looked up with hollowed eyes. There is no point in war, Naruto. You will understand it, sooner or later. Hashirama sighed. He could already feel the nature weeping for the loss of life that was to come. You are wrong, Grandpa. It is true that most wars are pointless, but this one is special. For the first time since the birth of chakra, all the clans, all the villages, all shinobi are united against a common enemy. No one wishes to sacrifice their freedom. Naruto said seriously. For the first time in history, we are united for more than greed, more than personal gain. This is for our future. Good speech. Hashirama snickered, but his words were honest. You should relay that message to whoever becomes the commander of the forces on the field, Naruto. Naruto turned to see Kurama approaching the room, followed by his 7 siblings. The only Bijou missing was the one still inside B, back in Kumo. That can't be good. Naruto thought with anticipation. We want to fight by your side, Son Goku said, stepping forward and standing next to Kurama. Absolutely not, Tobirama replied sharply. We are going up against Madara. A single glance from his eyes and you become nothing more than puppets. We deserve to fight. Matatabi replied harshly. You are not fighting for your future alone. Should you fail, we will also be enslaved. Naruto for his part was silent, pondering what to do. Don't tell me you are considering this? Tobirama asked incredulously, turning to look at Naruto. They are right. They deserve to fight for their freedom as well. Naruto replied, and the Bijou nodded. However, Naruto continued, stopping any rant. I can't allow you in the battlefield. Tobi is right. It is a chance I cannot take. Naruto replied sadly while most of the Bijou growled in anger. And who are you to stop us? Son Goku growled, his tails waving menacingly. You are not father. He spat. I know, Naruto answered with a small smile. But it is my job to protect you. Son Goku closed his mouth and looked at the floor. But he was still too proud to back down. It would appear they reached an impasse. Sensing the tension growing in the room, Hinata stepped forward. May I offer a compromise? Hinata asked, and everyone turned towards her. Why don't you seal the bijou inside a vessel of their choosing? Hinata offered, and everyone's eyes widened. When a bijou is inside a host, they are not affected by genjutsu, and this way they can join forces and help in the war. Hinata explained, and Naruto nodded, pondering very seriously this hypothesis. I agree, Matatabi replied instantly and jumped in the air, landing on Hinata's shoulders. I want her. Matatabi purred while Hinata for her part patted her head in acceptance. I can go with that, Naruto said and turned towards Son Goku and the others. Will you agree? Son Goku stayed silent for a few moments as he turned backwards to talk with the remaining free bijou, Sanbai, Koko and Saiken, since it appeared Matatabi had already agreed and chosen her vessel. They whispered for a few moments until they seemed to reach a consensus. We agree on the condition we are treated fairly and be allowed to roam free. You know that I won't allow anyone to use you purely as weapons of mass destruction. Pick your vessel. If they agree, then I will seal you and allow you to participate on the war. Naruto explained, and Son Goku nodded. He started walking around the room, sniffing anyone in range. I want your mate, Son Goku said towards Tobirama, who turned stiff as a board. Of all the people in the world, he managed to choose a Kage. Naruto muttered. Onoki is not going to like this one bit. Naruto snickered, thinking back to the old leader. Onoki really wanted the bijou back, and now Naruto was going to seal a bijou that once belonged to Iwa into the Kage of another village. I want you, Isaba said, walking towards Tobirama. I sense your chakra nature will go along with mine very well, Isabu explained. Naruto looked at Tobirama for an answer, but the man simply shrugged his shoulders, but Naruto could swear he saw a smile tugging the corner of his lips. And you? Naruto asked, turning towards the remaining bijou, Saiken and Koko. I sense we are very much the same, Itachi-san. I would like to be bonded with you, Koko said, much to Itachi's surprise. I thank you for choosing me, Itachi replied and bowed in kind. I want Hashirama, Saiken replied meekly. Of course, Hashirama replied joyfully. I guess it's settled, Naruto said as Tsunade come into the room. I will seal you after we come back from the meeting. Seal what and who? Tsunade asked, narrowing her eyes at Naruto, who gulped under her gaze. You know, Kurama began, drawing the attention to him. Father said that someday we would all be together. I just never thought it would be quite like this. Kurama laughed. At the Kage meeting. I apologize for my words during the last meeting, Sachikage-sama, Naruto said, bowing his head. Inoki opened his mouth to reply, but no words came out. If he was expecting anything from the spawn of the yellow flash, that this was not. It certainly wasn't, Inoki thought in mild disbelief, seeing the blonde in front of him. He looked around to see faces of shock and surprise amongst everybody in the room. Did you put him to this? Inoki hissed towards Tsunade, who also was shocked. No, she gasped. I see, Inoki said neutrally, contemplating the young shinobi in front of him. Stop bowing, boy. Show some pride, he snarled suddenly. Naruto rose but kept his face empty, waiting patiently for Inoki's answer. Why did you apologize? Inoki asked, narrowing his eyes in suspicion. I overstood my boundaries during the last meeting. It was not my intention to coerce you to relinquish control over the bijou by force, Naruto replied, looking somewhat downcast. I still have and will always have pride. I bowed not by lack of it, but as sign of respect and apology. And where do you stand now about the bijou? Inoki asked, and everyone in the room stiffened, waiting for the response. I am sorry, but giving you the bijou is not something I will do. Naruto frowned but replied nonetheless. I see, Inoki said, inhaling sharply. Everyone in the room tensed and waited for the old man to blow up once more. We are all shinobi, are we not? Naruto suddenly asked. Why must we force ourselves into endless fighting over land, money, or even power? We could do so much more if we all stood together. Naruto explained seriously. War will only lead to our mutual destruction. I suppose I agree with you on that, Inoki replied, and everyone sighed in relief. I'm old, Naruto. Very old, Inoki said, referring to the blonde by his name for the first time. And I have seen more chaos, blood and death than even you. The attack of my forces during the last meeting was not my decision. As you know, I was under Madara's influence, so I am partial to blame for that mess, and I extend you my gratitude for sparing my men," Inoki said, and Naruto smiled, shaking Inoki's extended hand. "Good. When this is all over, then we can talk properly." Inoki finished and sat down around the round table. "Now," Inoki began as the bodyguards also stood behind each of the Kages. "Let's show that bastard what happens when he messes with us." Inoki snarled and Tsunade snickered internally. Some things never change, Tsunade thought, casting a side glance at Naruto. She saw Hinata's hand discreetly come up and grasp Naruto's tightly, hidden behind the cover of the chair. Behind every great man stands an equally great woman, Tsunade thought with a smile and turned back to focus on the meeting. "We have confirmation that the smaller villages will also partake in this," Baki explained, pointing to several smaller countries in the Elementals nations. "Excellent," A agreed. "What news we have from Madara?" "Madara is holed up in the Rain village," Tsunade been explaining. "It is unclear if the Rain shinobi are by his side or if they are simply being coerced or manipulated. And his forces?" Mei asked, intertwining her hands together. "His army will be comprised of Zetsu clones. Their number is uncertain as of now, but we can expect it the high tens of thousands," Tsunade explained, and everyone grimaced at the numbers. "Here is all the information we have on their strength," Tsunade said, tossing a thick folder into the table. "My suggestion is sending bulky nintaijutsu users to the front lines with long-range cover. Zetsu are not dangerous, but they are hard to take down," Tsunade informed as they quickly read the report from the leaf. "You are trying to develop B.O.W.S against them?" Mei asked with a raised eyebrow. "B.O.W." Naruto whispered to Hinata. "Bioorganic weapon," Hinata replied, and Naruto nodded. "Yes, but progress has been difficult. They have an advanced healing factor." Tsunade frowned. "When can he start moving in?" A asked gruffly, leaning on his chair. "My army is ready. We should move in a week," Inoki offered, as did the other Kages. "If I may?" Naruto said, stopping the chatter. "Why not move tomorrow in a surprise attack? Catch Madara by surprise and end this before he can properly set up. You do know that the more time we take, the more Zetsu clones he can make," Naruto explained. "And how do you propose we move our armies across the elemental nations in less than 24 hours? A asked with amusement. "Leave that to me," Naruto replied. "If I could land all of our shinobi at the front gates of the Rain village, would we be ready for war?" Naruto asked, straining the word ready. While a surprise attack was good, if the troops weren't properly equipped, then it could easily backfire. A turn to the other nation's leader, and they all quickly agreed that would be possible to get their shinobi battle ready in a few hours. "It is possible. Now explain how you can move 80,000 shinobi from multiple places in the whole world in under a day?" A asked, crossing his arms in somewhat disbelief. "Not a day. I can move them all in under a second," Naruto explained, and silence ensued. "I severely doubt even your famous Hiraishin can achieve that," Inoki replied, stroking his beard. "The Hiraishin was designed to move only the user through space. Moving large amounts of mass takes a lot of chakra," Naruto explained and stepped forward, picking the world map. "A few years ago I designed a seal that would open a tunnel between 2 points in space and stabilize this link, keeping it open indefinitely. My technique works by creating a doorway between 2 points," Naruto said, folding the map such that the Leaf Village and the Rain Village touched. "The shinobi simply need to cross this door, and they will be in the Rain Village. In fact, this very technique is active in our Senju compound and linked to the Hokage Tower, the space bridge," Tsunade said, her eyes lighting up in recognition. "Exactly. How much energy does it take to work?" Mei asked, folding her hands together. "Actually not that much," Naruto explained, placing the map back on the table. "It's like friction. You need more force to put an objection in motion than to actually sustain that motion. Only someone with large reserves can kickstart the bridge. After that, even a genin that sustained the bridge open for hours." Naruto finished his explanation and stepped back, waiting for the leader to make their decision. The final verdict seemed to be the same. "Send word to our villages. Tell them to get ready for transport," I shouted to the shinobi in charge of delivering messages. "By the way," Mifune began, retrieving something from his pouch, "I took the liberty of designing a new headband for all of us," Mifune explained, tossing the headband across the table. The Raikage quickly caught the headband and turned it around, displaying the kanji for shinobi, branded on the metal. A grunted with a smile. I suppose we are. With Madara. Madara-sama. Zetsu called, rising from the ground. Madara did not acknowledge him, but Zetsu didn't seem surprised. I have some interesting information, get on with it, Madara said, overlooking the cloning of Zetsus. It appears that the allied shinobi forces moved their timetable. They will strike tomorrow, Zetsu said. Madara turned backwards to look at the white clone with surprise. Interesting, Madara said, scratching his chin with a pensive look. Then we will move forward as well. How many samples have you found until now? Madara asked, leading the clone to another room filled with scrolls. A few, Zetsu answered and rose fully from the ground, bringing several rotten corpses with him. I also have samples from all the previous Akatsuki members. I took precautions should they ever be defeated, Zetsu explained. Good. I also heard what happened to my clan. I suppose you don't have any samples from worthy Uchihas around? Madara asked, never looking up from a particular scroll that was used to bring him back. Easy enough, Madara read the instructions with more care as he prepared a massive Edo Tensei jutsu. I have one that I think you might enjoy. He was Fugaku's younger son who perished a few months ago, Zetsu said with a smirk. If he was anything like his father, then forget it, Madara replied and started waving through hand seals. He was a lost kid, easily manipulated, but he was strong nonetheless. A mid-S-rank shinobi with a manjikyu, Zetsu explained as Madara finished. Kuchios Edo Tensei, impure world reincarnation, Madara said, slamming his hand on the scrolls. The Zetsu clones he had on the room started becoming covered with leaves until they started taking different shapes. They will do, Madara grunted, looking at the reincarnated shinobi in front of him, waiting patiently for orders. Fugaku seemed particularly hateful towards Madara. I suppose he will do as well. The Edo Tensei is such a great jutsu, is it not? Madara asked with amusement, a dark smile adorning his face. Chapter 66, Red Skies. Every era has its battles, but this will be the last war. A new day was starting and the sun was blossoming behind the dark clouds in the sky. Rain. The only constant in the Rain Village. A village that always had seen so much change. But the rain remained, falling from the sky, forming vast lakes around the village. In a way, the people had learned to embrace the rain, and most even took comfort in that. It was the only thing that remained true in their home. Leaders and nations come and go, but the rain endured. Silence. There was an uneasy silence in the Rain Village. The streets were deserted, the houses seemed empty as well. The water ran free through the empty streets, flowing into the drains and ending on the outside of the village. The Rain Village was notorious for its modern design buildings. Metallic skyscrapers, road ducts and power lines running between the buildings. And at the center of the village, Payne's Tower. The tallest of all buildings. Overlooking the village like a guardian. Reconstructed just like it was before. It was a shame. The Rain Village was one of the earliest small villages ever formed, and just like the others it had a bloody history, filled with ups and downs, loss and gain, happy and sad moments. And it was shame because before the day was over, the Rain Village would be nothing more than dust. Nothing more than ash. Nothing more than a memory, washed away by the greatest battle ever seen in the elemental nations. But the village didn't know its end was coming to pass. After all, she was still standing like it had been for decades. 3 figures stepped out from Payne's Tower. The middle one stood proud and tall, his long black hair wet and clinging to his blood-red armor. He crossed his arms and narrowed his eyes into the distance, his face twisting into a smirk for seemingly no reason. It is time, Madara commented, watching a lone figure in the distance appear out of nowhere, standing a good distance from the village. By his side stood a man who wore dark blue pants with a blue cloth hanging from halfway up his stomach to his knees. He also wore black arm guards that covered his forearms and stretched up to reach his upper biceps. He also wore a purple rope belt around his waist, tied in a bow, in which he carries his sword. He opened his eyes and the familiar blood red of the Sharingan flared to life. I have no interest in your war, the figure said, turning to face him. A young face, marred by cracks and darkened sclerae. Markings of the Edo Tensei. I thought you would be pleased to face your enemies once more, Madara replied with amusement. Your enemies, not mine. Besides, this is not my world anymore. Sasuke snorted, turning back to face the horizon, his eyes darkening. I don't deserve to be here after what I've done. I did not think you would grow a heart, young Uchiha, Madara said. Sasuke was an intriguing Uchiha to Madara. He could see the several traits of the half-blooded line, but this one seemed to embrace his punishment. What do you think, Fugaku? Madara asked, turning to the other figure who had remained silent. Not by choice, mind you. You dare betray me, Madara? Fugaku snarled, having regained basic control over his body. He immediately brought his hands together to form a seal but was quickly stopped in his tracks by Madara. I don't see how I betrayed you, Madara said offhandedly, leaving out the fact that he allowed Fugaku to die after his defeat in Kumo. You were defeated in battle after all, by your son, Fugaku hissed in anger. Something you clearly made no point of informing me about. Madara grunted, closing his eyes in annoyance. You should be pleased by this second chance to defeat Minato, Madara said. No matter how much outclassed you may be, he added in thought with a chuckle. It's starting, Madara said, looking at the figure going through hand seals, the beginning of the end. Outside of the Rain Village, the outside of the Rain Village was also deserted. The only sound was that of the relentless rain, hammering away on the lake surrounding the city's walls. Naruto swirled into existence, standing far away from the walls. Even though it was day, the dark rain clouds made it feel like it was night. Naruto opened his eyes as they were flooded with blood-red color, the three black tomos spinning. He looked around but the place seemed empty. His hands were about to make a simple seal when he felt a small chakra fluctuation. He looked up to the village and narrowed his eyes in focus. His eyes saw further than everybody, being surpassed only by the Byakugan. The Sharingan bypassed the light fog and focused on the three figures standing on top of Pain's tower. Madara, Naruto thought, noticing the smirk on the man's face. He also noticed the two Uchihas beside him, summoned from the Edo Tensei. And so it begins, Naruto muttered as his hands blurred through the seals. The air behind Naruto started shimmering and twisting itself in the same pattern as his Kamui. Kahakuhashi Space Bridge! Naruto slammed his hands together, releasing a thunderclap sound. The space behind me seemed to sparkle, bolts of lightning flying everywhere, but Naruto seemed to remain unharmed. His chakra flared briefly and a gargantuan opening appeared behind him. A giant tunnel shimmered into existence, growing bigger and bigger until it stabilized, 30 feet in height. Naruto turned backwards to look at his space bridge. On the other side, the remaining 4 commanders stepped through the bridge, standing around Naruto. He was still surprised by being named one of the commanders on the field. True, he had experience in wars, but there were many other more knowledgeable shinobi. Darui, commander of the 1st Division. Mid-range Battle Division Senju Naruto, commander of the 2nd Division. Short-range Battle Division Senju Hashirama, commander of the 3rd Division. Short to mid-range Battle Division Baki, commander of the 4th Division. Long-range Battle Division Mifune, commander of the 5th Division. Special Battle Division, move out, Mifune cried, pointing forward. The 5 commanders jumped forward and watched as the allied shinobi forces streamed through the portal. It took only a few seconds for all of the shinobi to run through the portal. Each commander stood in front of their division. Nearly 20,000 shinobi stood before each one. Naruto took a small step forward and turned around, looking the allied shinobi forces. His red eyes roamed around the army. Most seemed to be calm, others were shaking from the adrenaline, and some were afraid. He didn't blame anyone. Most hadn't experienced war before. Most Chunin were green, having never seen anything but small missions. Naruto only had the bloodline civil war in Kiri, but not even that was a full-out war like this one. Naruto himself had to admit he felt a bit apprehensive as to how this war will play out. Would it be a quick and clean? Would there be heavy casualties on his side? And then there was the Edo Tensei. Naruto wondered how many shinobi Madara reincarnated with so many sets of bodies at his disposal. Naruto turned to Hashirama, who nodded with a serious face. When you are ready, he said, and Naruto turned back to the shinobi army. All of them seemed to be waiting for him to say something before the start of the war. Why do these things always fall to me? Naruto grimaced in thought before taking a deep breath. I stand before you today, not as a shinobi of the Leaf Village, but as a citizen of humanity. Naruto began softly, looking in the eyes of many shinobi close to him. We are faced with very gravest of challenges. Madara and his army stands behind those very walls. Naruto said, pointing towards the towering walls of the Rain Village. He plans to take all the Bijou, and by harnessing that power, he will project a genjutsu into the moon, trapping us all in a dream world, his own personal utopia. He claims peace but wants nothing more than puppets under his web. Naruto growled, clenching his fists. From the very first great ninja war to the last, shinobi have wounded and come to hate each other, for the benefit of their own nation and village. Through all the chaos that is our history, through all of the wrong and the discord, through all of the pain and suffering, through all of our times, there is one thing that has nourished our souls, and elevated our species above its origins, and that is our name. We are shinobi. We endure. We are all one, and it is because we have all been affected by Madara and his machinations. The Sand Village, Stone Village, Leaf Village, Mist Village, Cloud Village. Naruto trailed off, taking a deep breath. They no longer exist. We are now only shinobi. Naruto yelled, pointing his new forehead protector, proudly displaying the kanji for shinobi. Let us show him that he may take our lives, but he will never take our freedom. Naruto shouted, and the allied shinobi started cheering and yelling with him. Naruto took a deep breath and closed his eyes. It was time. Let this be the hour, when we draw swords together, Naruto said, opening his eyes and showing his Rinnegan to the world. Many shinobi gasped at the sight, but they were not deterred. Naruto raised his black sword to the air. To victory! Naruto shouted, and with that, everyone charged forward. Naruto smiled, leading the charge. Madara wouldn't know what hit him. Naruto had the backing of all the shinobi in the elemental nations. With Madara grunted, hearing the speech and watching the army charging forward. He turned towards the two Uchihas by his side. Fugaku, Sasuke, Madara called, drawing their attention to him. You know what to do, he said as both Uchihas nodded. Madara walked inside and sat on his chair. I'll be waiting for you, Naruto. Madara chuckled in thought, closing his eyes. He was concentrating solely on the Edo Tensei bodies Zetsu had managed to find. With Naruto, the ground shook, the water rippled, and the vast walls of the Rain Village trembled with every step the allied forces took. For the first time in the history of the elemental nations, all the shinobi in the world were united for a single purpose. Protect their freedom or die trying. 100,000 shinobi and samurai alike marched against the walls of the Rain Village. This was the most powerful army the world would ever know. For nothing could stand against the shinobi. Darui Hashirama, Naruto called to his fellow commanders. No more words were necessary, as both commanders nodded in acknowledgement. He spared a small glance towards Hinata, who smiled and nodded. The 1st and 3rd divisions split from the main force, heading left and right respectively. The main force would siege the front gates, while the 2 divisions would siege from the other side on the village. Naruto looked up at the sky and saw it sparkle with lightning. Naruto raised his hand, forcing the entire army to stop charging. Kirin, a voice shouted, and Naruto saw the lightning dragon appearing in the sky. Uchiha Kenjin, Uchiha Flame Formation! Naruto roared, slamming his hand on the water surface. A red dome shimmered into existence, covering the 3 divisions in the blink of an eye. The dragon roared and plummeted downward, crashing against the barrier. Many shinobi ducked instinctively while everyone else shielded their eyes against the blinding light. The lightning attack quickly dissipated against the barrier. The red defense sparkled slightly before disappearing from view as the shinobi regained their focus. Sasuke, Naruto said, noticing a single shinobi drop from the high walls of the Rain Village and landing on the water down below. Hundreds of white Zetsu clones also started emerging from the water, standing behind Sasuke. Naruto, Sasuke replied neutrally, walking forward slightly. From the wall started dropping several other very well-known shinobi. Among them were Deidara, Kakuzu, Haiden, Nagato, Konan, and even Fugaku. They all bore the same Edo Tensei markings and were all adorning the Akatsuki cloak. I see, Naruto replied sadly, looking at the faces of several enemies and friends. Kisame was missing because Itachi had sealed him inside his blade. Perhaps Naruto should have sealed their souls instead of destroying their bodies. Itachi, Naruto called, and the Uchiha stepped forward, frowning at the face of his brother. Sasuke just stared blankly at Itachi. His emotions clearly dampened by the Edo Tensei. You're in charge. Take our forces and proceeded with the plan. Siege the walls and eliminate the Zetsu clones. You are in charge until I return. Leave them to me, Naruto called, and Itachi raised an eyebrow but made no further comment. You heard him. Move! Itachi cried and led the troops away. Naruto, Nagato sighed while Naruto looked downwards. He dared to summon people who sacrificed themselves for this world to do his dirty work. Naruto growled, his eyes beginning to glow. They call me Shinobi no Kami, god of the shinobi. I think it's time I put my name to work. Today the world will know the full power of Senju Naruto. Naruto said, raising his head and gripping his sword tightly. You think you can take us all out on your own? Haiden laughed while Kakuzu shook his head. Even in death he is an idiot. Kakuzu thought and looked towards Naruto. The blonde stood against them with a look of determination and concentration. Kakuzu for himself would not underestimate the blonde again. My wrath is the last thing you shall ever see, Naruto replied, focusing on a single falling drop of water behind Haiden's back. His Rinnegan glowed and Naruto vanished into thin air, appearing in the place of the drop of water. Naruto placed a hand of Haiden's shoulders, startling every single Akatsuki member who jumped away in surprise. Ninjendo, human path, Naruto called out, gripping Haiden's soul tightly and ripping it out with no difficulty. Haiden crumbled to the floor. A single Zetsu clone surrounded by dead leaves. The Zetsu clone began to sink deep into the water, and the remaining leaves dispersing in the water surface. Madara's actions have no bounds. I will not delay this war to further the losses on my side, Naruto stated and charged forward. Katan Zukaku no Jutsu, Cranium Carver. Naruto looked up, seeing a pressurized fire ball charging against him. He raised a single arm when another voice shouted. Die! Deidara yelled from the other side, a large clay bird charging against the blonde. Naruto closed his eyes as both attacks connected with an explosion. Every Akatsuki member waited for the cloud of smoke to disperse. Bansho Tenin Universal Pull! Naruto's cold voice rang from the smoke cloud. Kakuzu gasped when he felt himself raised into the air and flew into the awaiting hands of Naruto. Naruto grabbed him by the neck, squeezing him hard. A black rod burst from Kakuzu's neck, stopping any chakra molding of any type. Kakuzu looked at the blonde in fear when his hand began to glow. Jinten Genkai Hakuri no Jutsu, Dust Release Detachment of the Primitive World. From Naruto's hand came a blinding white light that completely vaporized Kakuzu's body. Not even the Edo Tensei could repair if there was nothing left. Once the light dimmed, there was nothing where previously stood Kakuzu. There was no smoke, no dust, nothing left behind. Oi, Deidara gulped, stepping backwards. His face contorting into one of pure horror. That was the old man's technique. Naruto turned his head to face the only blonde in the Akatsuki. His eyes glowed. Stop it, Deidara shouted desperately, clutching to his head but unable to look away from Naruto's Rinnegan. Get out of my head! Deidara yelled as he started scratching his head in despair. Shinra Tensei, Nagato unleashed a pulse, forcing Naruto to end his illusions. Deidara fell to his knees, taking deep breaths. BSGH! Deidara gurgled when he felt something pierce his chest. He looked down to see a pitch-black rod sprouting from his chest. His body trembled from the strain. He looked backwards to his assailant only to see another Naruto looking impassively at him. Jinten, Dust Release! Deidara's eyes widened a fraction of an inch before he too was consumed by light. The Naruto behind Deidara burst into smoke and the remaining four members turned to the original. Sasuke, Nagato and Konan deserve to go easily into the afterlife. But you Fugaku, you deserve to suffer for everything you did in your life. My father let you go out easily, Naruto stated. Fugaku replied, crossing his arms. I underestimated you. To think you would possess the Rinnegan. It never once crossed my mind. Fugaku chuckled, stepping forward. It's going to take all four of us to take him down, Fugaku warned. You may want him dead, but we are forced to fight. Do not expect help from us, Konan answered as her body started dispersing into thousands of paper tags. Sasuke activated his Susanoo and Nagato summoned a bird to help his movements. All four shinobi charged forward while Naruto stood still. I'm sorry, Konan, Naruto said, putting a single hand forward. Katan, Naruto began, mere moments before the four shinobi closed in. Goen Rasengan, Great Flame Rasengan. A miniature sun appeared of the blonde's hand before it expanded. Everything in the vicinity was immediately sucked into a maelstrom of spiraling fire chakra. The rain evaporated before it could come into contact with the fire sphere. The fire tornado raged unstopped while Naruto stood in the center of it all, unharmed. Sasuke used his Susanoo to protect himself and fell backwards, his ultimate defense threatening to melt under the heat. Fugaku teleported away with Kamui and Nagato used the Preta path. The only shinobi with no escape was Konan. Once the fire tornado ended, there was nothing left of her but a single paper tag, still burning in the air. It finally turned to ash mere moments before hitting the water on the ground. "May you rest in peace, Konan," Naruto muttered in thought before turning to the remaining shinobi. Naruto pondered how to deal with the remaining 3 shinobi quickly. He doubted he could outspeed them since 2 members had Sharingans, and the remaining had a Rinnegan. He could overpower them, but the allied shinobi were not far away enough for Naruto to use more powerful abilities. Katon, Genkyu, Great Blaze Ball. Fugaku exhaled a meteor-sized sphere of fire, completely blocking his body from view. Apparently Fugaku was not bothered by collateral damage looking at the proportion of the fireball. Naruto looked backwards to see several allied shinobi fighting White Setsu. They would get caught in the blast. Kamui, Naruto focused on the charging fireball, swallowing the whole sphere into his pocket dimension. Just as Naruto finished absorbing the fire, he tilted his head to the side. His hair fluttered as a purple arrow avoided him by a small margin. The arrow sank in the water. He looked over his shoulder to see Sasuke charging with his Susanoo activated. 3 chains burst from Naruto's back. 2 of them wrapped around the skeletal Susanoo and ripped it in half, allowing the 3rd one to wrap itself around Sasuke's waist and smash him hard against the water surface. "Amaterasu," Sasuke said, focusing on the 3rd chain as it erupted in black flames and finally broke under the heat. Naruto smiled, but it was too late. He pointed his palm towards Sasuke and fired a pitch-black rod who struck against his chest. Sasuke coughed under the impact and tried to remove the rod, but he couldn't move. The rod was disrupting his chakra. "Jin-tun, dust release!" Naruto's hand glowed. "Shinra Tensei," Nagato bellowed. The water rippled with his attack, forcing Naruto to jump backwards. Nagato still had his arm extended when Naruto focused on him. "Kamui," Naruto replied, unleashing the previously swallowed fireball from Fugaku against Nagato at point-blank range. Nagato exploded in flames. Naruto looked at Sasuke still struggling with his black rod when a devious thought crossed his mind. "Rikuden no Jutsu, 6 paths technique," Naruto muttered, forcing more of his powerful chakra into the black rod. Naruto's chakra overwhelmed Sasuke's immortal body, finally turning his vessel into a puppet of Naruto. Sasuke was still trapped inside, but he was nothing more than a passenger now. Without a second thought, Sasuke pushed the small black rod deeper into his chest, hiding it from view. Sasuke jumped backwards towards Fugaku and Nagato, standing by their side like nothing had happened. Nagato's upper body was still regenerating and he was leaning against Fugaku. His bird summon was destroyed with the fire attack. "I was expecting more," Naruto taunted, pointing his finger at Fugaku. Fugaku snarled, pushing Nagato to the water before rushing through a set of seals. "Mokutan Jukai Koten, Deep Forest Emergence." The ground started shaking as dozens of trees burst from the water. The thick wood trees charged against Naruto. "Shinra Tensei," Naruto replied, lazily flicking his hand towards the incoming barrage of wood. The water rippled as the shockwave traveled against Fugaku. The moment it collided with the tree, it merely turned them into splinters without losing momentum. Fugaku clasped his hands even tighter, pouring more chakra into his technique. "I win," Fugaku heard Naruto's voice from behind and quickly turned, dropping his technique in the process. He didn't see Naruto until a hand landed on his shoulder. Here, Fugaku turned to his son. Sasuke now bore the Rinnegan. Naruto's voice was coming from his son's body. Realization dawned upon him, and he tried to Kamui away, but he could not. "How often we overlook what stands right in front of us." Naruto's voice came from Sasuke's body. Fugaku could barely move his head, but he caught a small movement in the corner of his eyes. He strained his muscles and managed to move his head slightly, just in time to see Naruto kneeling next to Nagato. The blonde placed a hand on Nagato's chest. He said something to Nagato before pulling his soul out. With a sign, Naruto stood up and calmly walked towards Fugaku and Sasuke. Sasuke was still in his control and was currently stopping Fugaku from molding any chakra. Any wrong moves and Sasuke would rip Fugaku's soul out as well. "You committed so many wrongs that death is too good for you." Fugaku gulped. "Why should you be allowed to rest when you try to enslave the world for your own benefits?" Naruto asked rhetorically, slowly going through hand seals. With the last seal he clapped his hands together. "Shiki Fujin, Reaper Death Seal," Naruto called. Fugaku's eyes widened in disbelief when he saw a form shimmer into existence behind Naruto. Death, Naruto greeted the thing next to him. I have a name, you know. Death answered, stepping next to the blonde. Really? And what is your name? Naruto asked. He had to admit that Death having a name never crossed his mind. In time. Names are powerful things. Death replied and walked forward. You told me your sister's names. Naruto replied with a deadpan. Did I? Death asked in mild disbelief. I must be getting old. Naruto looked shocked when he saw a small smirk on Death's aged face. You lied, Naruto accused while Death released a dry chuckle. Hubris, young Naruto. Hubris. What makes you think I'm under the obligation to answer truthfully to you? Death asked with amusement. I'm a god. I can do what I wish. Death replied and stopped just a step away from Fugaku, who seemed to have gone pale at the face of death itself. I told you I was the hunter. Naruto said his last words to Fugaku. Time to go, Death said, thrusting his arm into Fugaku's chest. With no effort at all, he plucked the man's soul out. Until next time, Death said, still clutching to Fugaku's soul. Naruto nodded and watched as Death vanished in plain sight. Fugaku's body crumbled into leaves. Naruto looked at the remaining Edo Tensei in the side of the battlefield. It's time, Sasuke, Naruto said and placed a hand of Sasuke's shoulders. You could have fought back when I forced my chakra into you. You had enough consciousness for that, Naruto stated with a raised eyebrow. I know. Thank you, idiot, Sasuke replied, a small smile tugging his lips before he departed. Naruto chuckled and watched as the final Zetsu clones sank into the water. It was over. With the Kages. We have intel from Itachi, Inoichi shouted from his seating position. The large water sphere in front of him started rippling wildly. It appears Madara has used the Edo Tensei to summon several shinobi to aid him. What? Hokage shouted, standing up and slamming her hands on the desk. The wood creaked in reply but held on. Orochimaru. When I find that snake, I'm going to snap that scrawny neck of his. She snarled. Inoichi's lips parted slightly at the words of his Hokage. Orders? Ao asked, working in conjunction with Inoichi to gather and deliver battlefield intelligence. Call Mifune and the 5th Division. Have him send some of the sealing teams to the other divisions as soon as possible. A ordered and Ao quickly delivered the message to the respective destination. Who did they summon? Tsunade asked, sliding down to her chair and nursing her head. We only have partial reports. As of now, Itachi claims all the Akatsuki seems to have been summoned along with Uchiha Sasuke. Other divisions report many other shinobi including the Sandame Reikage, Yandame Kazekage, Nidame Tsuchikage, Nidame and Sandame Mizukage along with the whole generation of the 7 swordsmen. Ao grimaced at the information. What? My father as well. A roared, punching the desk and breaking it in half this time. Damn those bastards, new information. Inoichi said, stopping A's rant. The Akatsuki has been defeated by Naruto. Well, that was fast. Tsunade chuckled but frowned, remembering everyone else summoned by Madara. Deploy the dragons to face against the Edo Tensei. Leave the white Setsu to the main army. My original is facing against the Sandame Reikage. Hinata announced from the side. This was a shadow clone of Hinata, standing in perfect lotus position. She had her eyes closed in deep concentration, several markings spread across her face and body. Tell her to leave. My father is too fast and strong for her, A announced. Don't underestimate my apprentice. Tsunade scoffed while the Reikage just stared at the woman with a shocked face. You have no idea the power of my father. He fought the Eight Tails to a standstill and took on an army of nearly 10,000 shinobi. His skin is impenetrable and there is no barrier that can stop him, A said desperately, running a hand through his pale hair. And where do you think you are going? Tsunade asked, noticing a rushing out of the room. I've got to go stop my father, A replied. Stop and sit down. Tsunade barked, stopping the Reikage in his tracks. Have faith in our troops. They are the ones fighting this war, fine. A bit back. But if she falls, don't blame me. With Itachi, battle formation. Itachi bellowed to his soldiers, stopping the march. Ninjutsu users in the back, taijutsu users in the front. Itachi ordered calmly. There were loud ruffling and splashing sounds behind his back as the shinobi organized themselves. Thousands of shinobi stood face to face against an even greater number of Zetsu. Zetsu were the perfect warriors. The perfect soldiers. The perfect slaves. They held no fear, no pain, no regret, no remorse. And with that they charged forward, completely fearless of what was about to come. First wave. Ready! Itachi cried, and the first two lines of shinobi pulled several kunai and shuriken each. Fire! Itachi yelled, pointing his arm forward. Every single shinobi threw their weapons forward at blinding speeds. A barrage of weapons was launched against the enemy. It felt like a symphony, the weapons singing in the wind as they sliced through the air and rain. Itachi's hair fluttered briefly as the weapons passed mere inches away from his head and charged against the incoming horde of Zetsus. Dozens of Zetsu fell dead to the water, floating limply in the surface. Hundreds more charged, stepping over their deceased brethren without second thought. Second wave. Ready! Itachi cried as the taijutsu users in the front line crouched. Fire! Itachi ordered loudly. Futon Shinkuhal, air blade. The back line took deep a breath and unleashed dozens of wind blades, sending them flying safely above the front line. Itachi looked as the blades sliced the Zetsu like a hot knife through butter. More Zetsu fell to the water, chunks of their bodies scattered across the water. And yet, their numbers seemed unending. Weapons, Itachi shouted as the sea of Zetsu closed in. Itachi took out a simple sword and rushed forward. The shinobi behind yelled and charged forward as well, the two fronts meeting in the middle in a flurry of attacks. Itachi kicked a Zetsu away, sending his body flying against another and taking both out. He ducked as another tried to jump against him. He swiped his sword so fast that he could see the trail of the blade on the rain. A Zetsu head rolled to the water. Dozens of Zetsu jumped in the air, bypassing the front line and going straight for the ninjutsu users in the back. Katan Gakakyu no Jutsu, great fireball technique. Itachi took a deep breath and released a fireball against the charging Zetsu. The fireball tore straight through the Zetsu, leaving nothing but burned remains on its path. The cleared path was quickly closed by the Zetsu. Itachi heard yelling far more desperate than he liked from the back line. He sidestepped the Zetsu, snapping his neck in the process, and jumped backwards. Those fools, Itachi thought in disbelief. The back line was actually using ninjutsu in the middle of the army and was, just from the looks of it, doing collateral damage to their own forces. With precision to be envied, Itachi took out several shuriken and killed 10 Zetsu that were causing mayhem in the middle of the army. The Zetsu crumbled to the floor, each bearing a shuriken embedded deeply in their head. The enemy is out there. Focus! Itachi yelled to his forces. The difference between us and them is that we are one. Together we will win. Itachi's words seemed to have calmed down most of the panicking shinobi. One my mark. 1, 2, fire! Itachi coordinated the combined jutsu. A barrage of fire powered by wind swept through the back line, killing nearly all Zetsu in the area. Itachi remained neutral as the shinobi cheered in victory. They were naive. He knew this was far from over. Wounded shinobi, Itachi shouted to the forces. Expose your wounds to the rain. Itachi bellowed, much to the confusion of everyone around. Nonetheless, they followed the orders of their commander in the field. What? A shinobi asked in surprise, noticing the burn he received from all the jutsu mayhem sizzle into full health when it came in contact with the rain. The burned skin replenished itself, and retook the normal pink color. Another one removed a kunai from his shoulder with a grunt and exposed it completely to the rain. To his surprise, the bleeding stopped immediately. The flesh around the wound started twisting, refiling itself until the wound was nothing more than a small scar on his shoulders. And even that was quickly disappearing until nothing but smooth, pink skin remained behind. What is this? The shinobi asked in disbelief, gently moving his shoulder. He quickly realized that he had no lingering pain from it. It was perfectly healed, something that would take days to fully heal, even with access to trained medics. Senpu Sanai Shino Aim, Sage Arts, 1000 Healing Rains, Itachi replied. Hinata's ultimate healing jutsu, surpassing Tsunade's own vast healing network. Hinata used the rain instead of slug summons. This way, Hinata was able to reach everyone in the battlefield at the same time. There was no escaping the rain. Itachi felt a couple larger chakra signatures approaching quickly. Sealing teams, Itachi called and moved to fight the Edo Tensei, whoever they were. With the 3rd Division. Mokutan Mokuria no Jutsu, Wood Dragon. Hashirama called out, a large wooden dragon rising from the ground and sweeping the front line of Zetsu, killing them by the dozens. Hinata Mido, Hashirama called from the front lines. He watched as Hinata charged into the middle of a Zetsu pack. 2 bones jutting out from her palms. She seemed to barely scrape the Zetsu, but he was seeing it with his own eyes. Zetsu were crumbling to ash everywhere around her. Mito, on the other hand, was standing in the air, 2 white wings made of paper attached to her back. She looked like an angel. She is so pretty, Hashirama thought fondly, forgetting about the war for a moment. Even Madara had acknowledged her beauty. And that was saying something from someone who hated anything related to Senju. Mito was unleashing paper bombs and other defensive and offensive seals. He had never seen someone so good in the sealing arts. In fact, Mito was the only battle sealing mistress in Konoha. Her offensive and defensive capabilities were always based around seals. She barely used ninjutsu or genjutsu. Sealing trap, obliteration. Mito pointed her arms towards the incoming wave of Zetsu. 6 paper tags flew against the enemy and quickly surrounded the Zetsu. The paper tags stopped their progress and simply hung midair, forming a perfect circle around dozens of Zetsu. Activate, Mito said, forming a single seal. The battlefield was lit on fire as the paper tags glowed and everything inside the circle was destroyed in a loud explosion of fire. Watch out, Hashirama yelled, startling Mito for a moment before she quickly turned around only to come face to face with an Edo Tensei. The shinobi extended both arms forward, standing right in front of Mito. Jinten Genkai Hakuri no Jutsu, Dust Release Detachment of the Primitive World. The mummy lookalike shinobi said before the sky was enveloped in white light. No, Hashirama snarled, his face becoming covered by blood-red markings instantly. He clasped his hands together, and the ground shook from his anger. A large wooden statue rose from the ground, raising Hashirama into the air. The wooden statue reared back before punching the shinobi and sending him flying into the ground. The white light vanished and Hashirama looked both surprised and relieved to see Mito still alive. 4 paper tags stood around her, forming a perfect spherical, translucent shield that seemed to have been absorbing chakra. The shield dropped along with her wings as Mito staggered forward, but Hashirama caught her before she fell to the ground. It's an honor to fight someone like you. The Edo Tensei rose from the ground, his arm restoring itself. Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage of the Leaf Village, I know you, Hashirama commented, holding Mito in his arms. Her chakra was depleted by using the last barrier. Jinten no Mu of the Dust Release, the Night-Aimed Suchikage, Hashirama said before Hinata jumped on top of the statue next to him. 2 other Edo Tensei joined Mu on top of the water. Hashirama recognized only one. Genjutsu Hozuki, Night-Aimed Mizukage, Hashirama said as the shinobi bowed in appreciation. The last one is the Sandaime Reikage, Hinata informed, her Byakugan never been turned off. I'm sending a clone back with Mito. We need a sealing team with us to deal with them. Hashirama frowned as Mito slept peacefully in his arms, never knowing the horrors going outside of her mind. The Rain Village. This is perfect for me. Genjutsu howled with laughter. This hasn't changed a bit since the last time I was here. Focus, Mu reprimanded. Don't tell me what to do. Genjutsu scoffed before walking to stand side by side with A and Mu. He watched with a raised eyebrow as 2 shinobi dropped from the sky, landing in front of them. I know you, Senju Hashirama. I'm surprised to see you here since you were dead when I was Mizukage, Genjutsu pointed out and turned towards the female standing next to him. I don't know you though. You are clearly a Hyuga. Senju Hinata. Senju? Genjutsu asked with a snicker and turned towards Hashirama. Ha! You old dog. So Mito wasn't enough to keep you down? Genjutsu laughed. Actually, I'm engaged to Naruto, his great-grandson. Hinata corrected, seeing Hashirama sputter next to her. Genjutsu was about to reply when he felt his body stiffen. Good to see you again, old friend, Genjutsu said, his body nothing more than a puppet. Madara, Hashirama sighed. And you are looking well too, Lady Hinata, Madara said, looking towards Hinata. Madara Sto-, it's inevitable, Genjutsu replied, cutting Hashirama off as the 3 shinobi jumped forward. Their faces completely neutral and their emotions cut off. Hashirama looked towards Hinata but said nothing. In an instant Hinata charged forward while Hashirama remained behind. She looked up to see Genjutsu and A running against her, but she was not deterred in the slightest. The Sandaime Reikage's body sparkled with blue lightning as he activated his Raiten no Yoroi, lightning armor, and charged forward at even higher speeds. Hinata tracked his movements carefully with her Byakugan. A moved his right arm forward, his hand gaining a stronger hue of blue as he ran head-on towards Hinata. Jigakuzuki, Hell Stab! A forced his hand forward, piercing right through Hinata's chest and cleaving her in half. Hinata, however, simply liquefied and reformed her body on the other side. She didn't look backwards and simply dashed towards the intended target. Mu's eyes widened when he saw a bone appear from Hinata's outstretched palm. He was about to jump away when two trees burst from water and wrapped themselves around his feet. Tomigoroshi no Haikatsu, all-killing ash bone. Hinata's bone went through Mu's upper body like a knife through hot butter, only stopping when Hinata's palm reached his chest. Mu didn't cough or yell in pain, he just crumbled into ash on the ground. Hinata jumped backwards from the pile of ash and waited to see if Mu would rise again. Her suspicions were confirmed. Her bone strikes rendered the Edo Tensei immortality useless. With her suspicions confirmed, she ran backwards to join Hashirama, who seemed to be having trouble fending off both A and Genjutsu simultaneously. Mokutan, Mokujihiki, domed wall! Hashirama called out, largest trees appearing in front of him and shielding him from a barrage of water bullets. In the same instant, Hashirama sidestepped A, who had been charging against him, having sensed him through Senjutsu. Hashirama ducked under lightning-powered strike and kicked him backwards. A tumble through the water, not even his armor being able to stand against the Senjutsu-powered kick. The Raikage quickly stood up and was about to charge forward like nothing had happened when several water tentacles rose from the water. The tentacles wrapped themselves around his arms, his legs. Hinata pushed her technique forward, forcing A to fall to his knees and his arms to remain stretched outwards to avoid him from using jutsu. A's lightning armor sparkled but seemed to have no effect as the chakra was simply absorbed by the tentacles. Hinata approached the man slowly, her eyes gaining a blue hue and her hair turning white slowly in successive waves. She stopped in front of the man, her Tensigen activated and her beautiful long white hair cascading down her back. She crouched and brought her right palm to A's forehead. Her Tensigen glowed softly before dimming down as she got up and stepped backwards. Hinata dropped the water tentacles as A got up and hastily charged against Hinata. Mere inches from his fist to connect to Hinata, A simply stopped moving, his right arm still aiming forward. His head twitched slightly before he fell to the water in spasm. Hinata cringed slightly when she noticed A's body bending in unnatural angles and frowned when she saw his head do a 360 degrees turn before A stopped moving altogether. If he was alive, then he would be gone by now. Hinata frowned in thought when she saw A's neck snap backwards. A slowly stood up, the Edo Tensei jutsu slowly healing the damage. Once he was standing, his eyes gave off a small blue glow before settling down to the usual black. Go help our forces. Terminate all Zetsu in the area along with any Edo Tenseis. Hinata ordered and A dashed away at top speed, completely entrapped by Hinata's jutsu. Hinata joined forces with Hashirama to take down the final Edo Tensei opponent in this front. Damn, Hashirama cursed, the area being filled with mist. There is too much chakra in the air. I can't get a fix in his position. We need to defeat his summon first so we can stop this damn mist and genjutsu. Hashirama explained and Hinata nodded. She closed her eyes and linked to the falling rain. There. Hinata said, pointing her arm towards a fixed location. I can feel my rain hitting his clam summon. Hashirama nodded before flashing through hand seals. Suetun Sujin Hiki, water wall. Hinata called out, raising a small water wall to block another wave of water bullets from genjutsu. Hinata. Hashirama yelled, finally being able to trap the clam with his wood techniques. Hinata quickly jumped high in the air and brought her heel down on the summon. Tsutenkyaku, heavenly foot of pain. Hinata smashed her heel on the clam and a cracking sound echoed through the clearing. The water rippled from the impact as the summon disappeared in a cloud of smoke and the mist slowly started dissipating. Mizufusen no Jutsu, water balloon. Genjutsu used the water beneath his feet to form bubbles that started floating around in the air. With a small twist of his arm, the bubbles were launched forward against Hinata and Hashirama. Neither shinobi moved as the attack collided. Hinata simply liquid her body each time a bubble connected, while Hashirama didn't even get hurt with the attack. His skin hardened severely with the use of senjutsu. Let's end this, Hashirama declared and clasped both hands together. Mokutan Jukai Koten, deep forest creation. The ground rustled as dozens of trees burst from the water. The senjutsu power technique had the trees in the air and chasing after the final enemy in the blink of an eye. Hakushu Air Palm. Hinata cut the remaining escape path for Genjutsu as he trapped in the trees and restrained from any movement. Hinata quickly launched a bone at the Edo Tensei and disintegrated his body, finally defeating the enemy. With Jiraiya's company. Will you be quiet? Jiraiya growled at the purple-haired Kunoichi crouching next to him. I still wonder why Kakashi married you. I suppose he liked your personality, Jiraiya said, looking at Anko's well-developed breasts. All he got for a response was a smirk. He knew Anko was someone who didn't mind using her body to get what she wanted. I'm just tired of waiting, Anko replied, flicking a single strand of hair away from her face. She looked at the remaining members of her little infiltration squad, Senju Tobarama, Hyuga Niji and Aburaim Shino, but all she got were blank looks. Cowards, she muttered beneath her breath. We can't rush this. We must wait for the war to be deep in progress before we think of sneaking in, Tobarama explained, looking at the horizon and focusing on the grand walls surrounding the Rain village. All right, Jiraiya said, pocketing his portable telescope. Let's move in. Silently, Jiraiya said, stressing the last word. The group moved as whole, running through the vast lakes of the Rain village and heading straight for the walls. All around them the war raged on. Kunai, shurikens, swords littered the grounds where the water was not deep enough. As they closed into the walls, they started walking not on water but on the bodies piling in the battlefield. They were knee-deep in Zetsu corpses as they arrived near the walls. We have a problem, Niji said, stopping and narrowing his eyes at the walls. The village is surrounded by some type of chakra dome. Jiraiya frowned at Niji's words and chucked a kunai against the concrete walls. He expected the kunai to hit the wall and remain stuck. Instead it simply bounced backwards, producing small ripples originating from the point of impact. Well, Jiraiya sighed. That is going to delay us. Not necessarily, Tobarama disagreed and approached the wall, placing a single hand against the shield. Once more the shield rippled upon contact. Can you see any type of seals on the walls? Tobarama asked, wondering where the shield was being generated. Can't. The shield is too bright for my Byakugan. I can't discern anything accurately, Niji said, switching off his Dijitsu for the meantime. Shino, Tobarama called, but the shinobi in question nodded in negative as well. This complicates things if we can't get a fixed location on the central core, Tobarama explained, thinking how to disrupt the field. Maybe we can slip past it, Jiraiya offered. How about we call Naruto? Niji suggested, crouching next to Shino and Anko. He can simply walk through the barrier and place a marker inside. Niji explained his solution. He couldn't do much other than bounce ideas back and forth. We can't rely on Naruto. He's busy with his own battles. Tobarama criticized the young shinobi next to him. It's obvious that he hasn't reached the walls since the barrier still stands. Perhaps we can bypass it, Tobarama said and turned to Jiraiya. You have been here before. What is the thickness of these walls? Tobarama asked, looking at the thick concrete walls. He tried punching the walls and estimated the thickness by the sound, but all he got was silence because of the shield. I think around 10 feet, but let's make it 15 to be sure you don't land us inside the walls, Jiraiya commented, rubbing his chin as if to help jog his memory. Damn it. That is really close to the maximum limit I can arrive near the marker, Tobarama cursed beneath his breath. The Hiraishin, Flying Thunder God, allowed some flexibility on where the user arrived at the marker. But it was still limited on the distance to the marker itself, and 15 feet was pushing the line on Tobarama's skill. Use my chakra, Isabu said, and Tobarama found himself on his dreamscape, looking at the giant turtle in front of him. Tobarama said nothing and simply nodded. He walked forward and bumped fists with the turtle. On the outside, his body was enveloped by a shroud of bubbling red chakra with 3 tails waving wildly. 4 chakra arms shot from his body, each one grabbing a different teammate. Tobarama took a single kunai and dropped it to the ground, the marker glowing softly. Hiraishin, Flying Thunder God technique. Tobarama and his team vanished in a flash of red chakra. Tobarama groaned and pushed his and Isabu's mixed chakra through the technique, straining his ability to the maximum, and teleported as farther as he could from the marker. Inside the Rain village there was a bright flash of red as 5 shinobi appeared out of nowhere and collapsed to the ground in a heap of tangled limbs. Everyone good? Tobarama groaned as he got up, extending a hand to Niji who was nearby. Yeah, was the general response, along with some grunts and growls, mostly from Anko, who seemed to land awkwardly on the ground. Excellent. Let's move, Tobarama said and stepped forward only to find some resistance. He looked backwards only to see a piece of shirt trapped inside the walls of the Rain village. Way too close. Tobirama gulped in thought, ripping the piece of shirt and leaving it behind, trapped inside the wall. Niji, Tobirama said, and the shinobi nodded. Byakugan, his eyes flared life, several bulges appearing around his eyes. Niji quickly roamed through the city, searching every house, every room, every closed and space he could find. There are Zetsu everywhere in the streets. However, the ranged shinobi and other civilians seem to be in some type of stasis in their homes, Niji said in surprise. Stasis? Jiraiya asked, thinking he misunderstood. I mean they are all sleeping. Every single man, woman and child. Niji replied. Shino, can you confirm? Tobirama asked and Shino nodded, lowering his arms as the bugs receded back. That can either be a good thing or a very bad thing. What about Madara? I am searching. Madara is at the top of that tower, Niji said, pointing towards Pain's tower in the middle of the village. He seems to be concentrating. I think he might be controlling the Edo Tenseis from there, Niji explained. Let's go stop him then, Enko stated and started walking forward. Stop, Tobirama said in a cold, serious voice. Enko shivered at the tone and turned backwards. You have no idea the extent of Madara's power. Only Naruto can defeat him. Let's focus on finding where the Zetsu are coming from and disabling this damn barrier before evacuating, Tobirama ordered, and Enko nodded in reluctance. Even if Madara was so powerful, she still wanted to go at him. Impossible, Niji said in disbelief. The Zetsu keep coming. Madara seems to using a couple of Edo Tenseis to feed chakra into some statue that keeps producing Zetsu. It's like an endless factory, Niji explained, shocked to what he was seeing. Zetsu kept pouring out like an assembly machine. Priority number 1 is disabling the production. This statue, describe it to me, Tobirama stated, considering for a moment an endless army of Zetsu. It looks like a giant brown-colored humanoid. It has 9 eyes and both hands are shackled together. Tobirama finished and Niji nodded. Tobirama receded back into his mind and found himself once more standing in front of Isabu. I need to talk to Naruto, Tobirama said. Isabu nodded and focused on linking with Kurama. A side effect of having the Bijou sealed was that allowed the members to communicate to each other mentally. What do you need? Naruto's voice ranged in Tobirama's head. Madara is still making Zetsu. I need you to summon the Gedamazu to stop the production, Tobirama explained and felt Naruto nod in acknowledgement. Niji, keep looking at the statue, Tobirama said, and Niji nodded. He kept looking at the statue and the general vicinity until he saw the statue disappear in a cloud of smoke. It disappeared, Niji replied in shock, seeing the Zetsu production effectively stop. Excellent. Now let's find the core and drop this barrier. With Naruto. Give me space, Naruto yelled to the shinobi around him. Almost instantly everyone jumped away from him as he slammed in hands on the water, creating large ripples. Kuchio's no jutsu, summoning jutsu, Gedamazu. Aroyarara, the Gedamazu burst from the ground and roared into the sky. Naruto, having summoned the vessel of the 10 tails, decided to put it to some use and began using his summon to destroy the Zetsu by the dozens. He stood on top of the enormous statue as it jumped into the middle of the Zetsu army. Aroyarara, the demonic statue, lets out an enormous shock wave, causing the Zetsu within the vicinity to be pushed a far distance away. Zetsu were launched harshly into the air by the dozens. The Gedamazu continued its rampage while Naruto fought against some brave Zetsu who ventured to face him on top of the statue. Naruto focused on his ability of manipulate gravity, and started pulling large chunks of rock from the ground and sending them flying against the charging enemy. The Zetsu were crushed and squashed beneath the large boulders. Push forward, Naruto bellowed. The Gedamazu slammed his foot on the ground, killing every Zetsu close by, and started clearing a path for the army to reach the walls. 1. The shinobi would have advantageous territory once they were inside the walls. Outside in the open was perfect for the large amounts of the Zetsu. Naruto looked up to see the dome that surrounded the village to suddenly collapse. He knew that Tobirama and his team had succeeded in their infiltration. Now, Naruto yelled and charged forward, the ground shaking with each step the Gedamazu took. With the remaining division, they never end. Minato heaved, taking long deep breaths. All around him were hundreds of Zetsu corpses piling on the ground. He twirled his 3-pronged kunai as slashed another Zetsu and killed him instantly. Getting tired, old man? Now grinned as she kicked a clone, sending him flying backwards. I would like to see you pull my 3rd level Haraishin and not getting tired, Minato muttered in thought, looking at the dark-haired Uchiha next to him. She sure was a bubbly character. Amaterasu no Yoro, Amaterasu armor. Minato raised an eyebrow at the technique's name, and was surprised to see Nao's body being completely shrouded in pitch-black flames. Interesting, Minato stated as he watched Nao charged against a horde of Zetsu head-on. A kick here, a punch there was all it took. Nao didn't even need to actually kill the Zetsu with her strikes. The black flames of Amaterasu would finish the job quickly enough. After all, the inextinguishable black flames of Amaterasu were said to burn as hot as the sun, and nothing could put them out but the user who created them in the first place. Minato watched the Zetsu melt around him and form large slobs of white goo on the ground. And even that was still being burned until nothing remained behind. "Let's go, Kakashi," Minato said to the silver-haired shinobi next to him. "Youngsters these days." Kakashi sighed, fake tears running down his face. "No respect for the elderly, I'm older than you," Minato said with a sweat drop. "Technically Naruto gave you a 25-year-old body. That makes me older than you," Kakashi said smugly. "Fine. Move it, old man," Minato ordered jokingly. Kakashi sighed and activated his Sharingan, charging forward once more against the never-ending army of Zetsu. Chidori, Kakashi channeled lightning chakra through a kunai on his hand. He made a vertical slash and bisected a Zetsu cleanly in half, letting the parts fall to the sides. 197, Kakashi said out loud, more of reflex than anything else. "Only 197, Zabuza yelled from the side. "Minato was right. You are getting old." Zabuza laughed and charged forward. He jumped into the middle of the Zetsu and spun his blade, killing the group instantly. A voice yelled from the back, making Minato, Zabuza, Kakashi and Nao turn around. To their surprise they found Hinata walking towards them calmly. "Sawarabi no Mai Bracken Dance!" Hinata bellowed and the ground shook. Thousands upon thousands of bones broke through the ground. Wave after wave of bones charged against the enemy, impaling any Zetsu standing and slaughtering everything in their path. Everyone just stared at the forest of bones in front of them, Zetsu hanging limply from the bones, impaled through the chest. To further their shock, each and every single Zetsu was turning to ash and dropping to the ground in a pile. It took only a few seconds for hundreds of Zetsu to be reduced to nothing more than a blanket of ash covering the battlefield. "Hinata," Minato replied, still shocked to see the wave of destruction. "Tobirama and his team have breached the walls. We need to push forward," Hinata said, stopping near the shinobi. "Naruto is already inside the walls and making his way to fight Madara. The city's evacuation is already under progress," Hinata explained. "We can fall behind," Minato said, and everyone agreed. "Look out," Kakashi yelled. He saw a figure moving fast towards Hinata. Even to his Sharingan it was a blur. Kakashi and everyone else was about to step in and kill the Edo Tensei when Hinata raised a hand in a stop motion. "I injected a chakra parasite in his system. This Edo Tensei is under my control," Hinata explained as the Sandaime Reikage stopped next to her and simply stared blankly ahead. "Are you sure?" Zabuza asked with caution. "The Sandaime Reikage was no pushover," he warned, his eyes trailing off to the Edo Tensei. Hinata simply nodded. Hinata made a head gesture and the Edo Tensei charged ahead at blinding speeds. "Let's end this," Hinata said, and everyone charged forward to exterminate the remaining Zetsu with the Kages. "Tsunade-sama!" Shizen yelled, pushing the doors open and running into the room. "What?" Tsunade asked, jumping slightly from the surprise. "The Z-virus is ready for deployment," Shizen said, out of breath. "It's a bit late, but better late than never," Tsunade said, walking around the table and heading towards Shizen. "Kill rate?" she asked, looking at the small vial. 100%, Shizen replied with a smile. "As a precaution, we should to pull Hashirama out of the field. Since the Zetsu clones are based off Hashirama's body, there is a chance this virus could affect him as well," Shizen explained, and Tsunade nodded. "Hinata," Tsunade said, and walked towards the sitting clone of Hinata. "You are up?" The clone nodded and stood up. "Kuchios no Jutsu, summoning technique." 10 clouds of smoke erupted in the room. Once the smoke disappeared, the 10 dragons stood circling Hinata. The dragons had grown heavily in the last few months, now in their teenage years so to speak. Each dragon now had a wingspan of at least 16 feet and an approximate length of 12 feet. "You know what to do," Hinata said, and every single dragon nodded before flying out of the window. With Naruto, the 10 dragons flew above the village, dispersing the Z-virus in large quantities above the city. While invisible to the naked eye, the sheer quantity of the virus being deployed seemed to swallow the village in a poisonous cloud. All around, the Zetsu stopped being able to walk and simply fell to the ground, shaking and twitching until they stopped moving altogether. With the Zetsu permanently killed, the remaining Edo Tensei being sealed, and the Rain village being evacuated, there was only one thing left to finish this war. Naruto was running up the stairs in the Pain's Tower, hoping to reach the top floor as quickly as possible. His heart pounding in his chest. This was it. The final battle. Naruto heard Hinata's voice from his mind. The city is evacuated and we are pulling out. See you soon. Naruto heard the small stutter in her voice but nodded nonetheless. Naruto finally reached the top floor and stopped in front of the metallic door separating him from the final enemy. He placed a hand on the door, feeling the coldness of the metal as he slowly pushed the door open. He was greeted with darkness with the single exception of a pair of glowing silver eyes at the back of the room. So you finally came, Madara said, and Naruto could swear he saw the man smile. It's over, Madara. You have lost, Naruto said, but Madara simply smirked and raised from the chair. We have different definitions of losing, Naruto, Madara said, walking forward and stopping a few feet from Naruto. From behind Madara stepped 5 Edo Tensei that stood next to him. The 5 Jinchuriki that were captured were now part of Madara's 6-path technique. You are missing one, Naruto commented, seeing only 5 Edo Tenseis. Madara only laughed before a predatory smile reached his lips. Shall we dance? Chapter 67 Clash of Gods. Kurama. That was the name the old man had given him. It was lost to time. Kyubi no Yoko, the 9-tailed demon fox, was the name the humans had called him for centuries. He didn't blame the humans for calling him that. He supposed he earned the name in the end for what he had done. People of the old world had called him a natural disaster, appearing suddenly out of nowhere to attack areas that had been breeding the darkest aspects of the human nature. They were not wrong. Kurama and his brothers had drifted away once Hagoromo and Ashura had passed away. He had chosen to honor his father's wishes and continue his work through his immortal life. He was a being of pure chakra, pure energy. He would not age, get sick, and he could not be killed either. Trust me, many people had tried when he attacked. The first few years after Hagoromo's passing he simply wandered the land. Ashura was taking care of everything. But then he passed away and his descendants fell very short of their ancestors' wishes. They forgot their burden and tasks they should have carried on through their blood. And so, for centuries, Kurama tried to keep humanity on the path his father had given them. Even when humans themselves forgot their very origins. Hagoromo had given them chakra so that humanity could understand each other with no words. Kurama watched as humanity learned to harness their chakra. Each generation carrying on and improving until the gift of chakra was used for war. Humanity had learned to strengthen their bodies and bend the elements with peculiar ease that surprised even him. But even the best of them fell short of his father's abilities. That man could bend chakra to his will like feeble paper. And so Kurama felt compelled to end it. He struck with unstoppable fury, carrying death in each step. He attacked the source of their power, destroying their villages and erasing their knowledge of chakra. But he couldn't do it alone. The world was far too vast for a single being to accomplish. Even for someone like him. And so he asked his siblings to help. Pathetic, all of them. They declined and hid away from the world, claiming that hurting humans was against what father had wished for in the first place. Foolish siblings, all of them. And so Kurama kept doing his work along for centuries on end. Centuries more passed and humanity still hadn't learned. He grew tired of humanity's lack of understanding and so he stopped. He found a mountain and carved himself a small den, so that he could rest for a few years and perhaps when he woke up once more, they had learned something. How wrong he was. He was woken, not by free will, but by humans themselves. Shinobi ninja, they were calling themselves now. Armed with swords and other weapons they had the gall of charging head-on against something like me. Foolish humans. I squashed them all like the bugs they were. How far they had fallen. They carried some forehead protector on their heads. I noticed the symbol but discarded it nearly immediately. Only later on I would realize that was actually the symbol of their village. At least they had learned something, those shinobi. Now if they were all together in the same village like the old man's wishes then it was all over. Of the attacking group only 2 shinobi survived. Ginkaku and Kinkaku had somehow managed to survive my powerful chakra and ended up with a watered version of my abilities. I spat them out and left them half alive on the ground. I left their fate to the gods and walked away to find another den. And then came Uchiha Madara. Just from his chakra I could feel he was descended from that wretched Indra. But my eternal surprise were his eyes. Some evolved version of the Sharingan. And with that he managed to control me, no matter how much I resisted. He subdued me, manipulated me, the greatest of all Bijou, like some doll. I was summoned to do battle against Ashura's descendant. Now that had been a surprise. I could feel their chakra. Ashura and Indra had been reincarnated and decided to go at it again. And this time, I was a tool in their arsenal. In the end I was sealed into a human vessel and found myself with my mental faculties returned. I was relived. Don't misunderstand me. I hated Hashirama and his wife, hated Konoha, but better a cage than a leash. Mito and I didn't talk, and she didn't wish to use my chakra, so I was content to simply wait. I was eternal and she was mortal. Even if I was switched to another vessel, there would come a time when I would be free. Human years meant nothing to me as I had already lived centuries before any of them. The second vessel was some girl named Uzumaki Kushina. This one did try to talk sometimes. I kept silent as I had nothing to say to her. Then she decided to marry one of them. One who possessed those cursed eyes, and I could feel his chakra. Madara had procreated into some blonde brat named Minato. And then his vessel had dared to marry him of all people. Sometimes I just couldn't get away from those abominable eyes. The years passed, and I watched the boy like a hawk, waiting for the moment he would make his move and use me. All Uchihas wanted, no, craved power. And I was an infinite source of it. To my eternal surprise, Minato was a good and kind-hearted man. For a moment I considered he might have been Ashura's reincarnation, but his chakra showed no sign of it. I found myself liking that Uchiha as I slumbered within the seal. If it wasn't for these dreaded chains, I would almost consider myself lucky. Then another one came. Another Uchiha with their precious Manjiki Sharingan, and I found myself in their leash once again. It will not happen again. He made a choice. I voluntarily let myself be sealed into Minato's child, some brat named Naruto. Better a cage than a leash. But I was very surprised by the brat as I could feel something different in him. I could feel specks of the old man's chakra running through his system. Small drops of father's powerful chakra swimming in the ocean the brat possessed. Naruto was a mix of both parents. Kind and good-hearted, but cold and ruthless if necessary. I chose to become a friend instead of a prisoner. I watched him grow until this very moment. The moment in which he stands facing the first man to ever bind me against my will, Madara Uchiha. "You are missing one," Naruto commented, seeing only 5 Edo Tenseis. Madara only laughed before a predatory smile reached his lips. "Shall we dance?" That wretched line. Kurama saw red and flared his power, flooding Naruto with his powerful chakra and ripping out of the seal. With a mighty roar that shook the building, Kurama appeared in the real world in an explosion of smoke and rock. The small room they stood in exploded outwards in a shower of debris, with Kurama emerging from the cloud of dust, his 9 tails waving wildly behind him. Madara's eyes widened in a mix of shock and disbelief when he saw the large Bijou appear in front of him so suddenly. Even Naruto stumbled from Kurama jumping out of him with no warning and charged against the ancient Uchiha with fierce determination. Naruto and Madara's paths remained behind while Kurama charged against the old Uchiha. He should have known that Kurama wouldn't just stick to watch the battle. He had a personal interest in being part of the battle. Naruto channeled chakra to his feet and landed on the side of one of the buildings, watching Kurama snatch the Uchiha with his claws and plummet downwards. Naruto looked around to see the 5 paths looking cautiously at him. "I guess I will deal with them while Kurama is busy with Madara," Naruto thought to himself. And while he had faith on Kurama's power, he knew the Bijou would not come even close to defeating Madara. The Uchiha had too much power, knowledge and experience to simply be defeated in a blast of energy. Naruto pondered on how to dispatch of the paths quickly. Of the 5 paths, he had only known Yujuto, and had met Yagura briefly before he killed himself back in Kiri. The first step would be figuring out which was which. Naruto crouched and made a very familiar T-shaped hand seal. 100 clones appeared in a cloud of smoke. They split into groups and launched themselves into the enemies without a care in the world. Han took the clones head-on, sprouting multiple arms and destroying the clones with a mix of chakra blasts and physical attacks. Han, the Jinchuriki of the 5 tails, was the Azura path. Utakata simply ran away from the clones to keep some distance. He placed both hands on the nearby surface and summoned a giant centipede who proceeded to slither around the clones and squash them. The clones managed to take out the centipede and the newly summoned ox before they were destroyed. Utakata, the Jinchuriki of the Six Tails, was the animal path. Rashi engaged in taijutsu with the clones, using his lava-release chakra mode to coat his body in lava. The clones were burned and destroyed, and any ninjutsu attack coming against him was simply absorbed. Rashi, the Jinchuriki of the Four Tails, was the Preta path. Yagura launched a wave of water against the clones. They used Kamui to bypass the water wall and charged head-on against the enemy. Yagura kept to taijutsu and showed no sign of using any type of Rinnegan-related abilities. A clone charged head-on and simply phased through his body and appeared in the back. In the end, Yagura was overwhelmed by the clones and blown to pieces with a point-blank Rasengan. The final path was Yujito, who kept running away from the clones. As the remaining paths dispatched of the clones, they went to protect Yujito from being destroyed. In a matter of minutes, all the clones had been dealt with, and only Yagura seemed to be reforming slowly on the ground. Yujito quickly approached the fallen path and summoned the King of Hell to fix him in a far faster manner than the Edo Tensei regeneration itself. Yujito is the Naraka path, Yagura for the human path, Rashi for Preta path, Han for the Azura path, and Utakata for the animal path. Naruto concluded, narrowing his eyes at the 5 Edo Tenseis. He took a deep breath and his face was covered with red markings, symbolizing the use of senjutsu. Naruto felt no chakra source nearby with the exception of the 5 paths and Madara. How strange that Madara did not choose the Deva path for any of them. Naruto thought in retrospect. The Deva path was the best path for combat, and yet, Madara had chosen to not use it. Naruto broke his train of thought and got ready. Nothing more than puppets, Naruto thought, his right hand forming a translucent cube. He flashed to the only path he had tagged with the Horatian seal. He appeared behind the Azura path, and placed his right hand on his shoulders. Before Han could even react, his body was shrouded in white light and completely vaporized. Naruto triggered his Kamui to slip past the stampeding bull. He twisted midair and channeled chakra into his wrists. 2 shuriken popped from each arm. He imbued them with lightning chakra until they gained a blue hue and started sparkling. With a flick of his wrists, the shurikens were launched and struck the bull, killing the beast instantly and destroying the summoned animal. But Naruto knew these beasts, these summons, these animals, were mere chakra constructs. They weren't truly alive. Without a moment's qualm, Naruto stepped off the ledge of the building. Like a silver-armored specter, he plummeted a full 5 stories toward the stony, unyielding floor of the village. The death-defying fall certainly would have killed a civilian, or at the very least left him broken and bleeding upon the pavement, yet Naruto landed with the nimble elegance of a jaguar, so inhumanly smooth and graceful that he appeared to be striding briskly away before his black sandals even touched down upon the rain-swept cobblestone. He stopped walking as an enemy quickly approached him from behind. Yagura, the human path, was running at full speed against him. He wasn't exactly being quiet, or even stealthy, with his loud steps hitting the water on the floor and loud splashing sounds. The blonde felt Yagura charging but made no effort to turn around to face his opponent. The human path neared ever so slowly. Naruto's eyes glowed and Yagura froze as if he had struck a wall, and yet, nothing visible stood in front of him barring his movements. Naruto turned around to look at his captured enemy. Yagura's fingers twitched, showing that Naruto had yet to perfect whatever technique or ability he was employing. Naruto moved to the next step and Yagura's body started to be compressed ever so slowly, almost like a large snake had wrapped itself around his body and started twisting. His arms bent to unnatural angles, bones cracked and the skin burst open, but no blood was spilt thanks to the immortal body of the Edo Tensei. The other paths ran to his help. Shinra Tensei, Naruto whispered from where he stood and watched with satisfaction as the charging paths were blown away with the exception of Yagura, who never even moved. Small buildings around him were blasted into smithereens while the large building he had jumped from started collapsing. Naruto raised his right arm towards the falling building, and just like Yagura, the falling heap of concrete and rock froze mid-fall. The 10-story building, still tilted and threatening to crush both Naruto and Yagura, had stopped as if it had hit the very same invisible wall. Naruto lowered his arm, but the building remained the same, frozen in space and time, defying the very laws of gravity. The blonde focused solely on Yagura and kept his technique going forward. Yagura no longer stood on the floor, but hovered in the air. his legs being squashed upwards, his head pushed downwards. His whole body being compressed, squashed like an old vehicle in a car crusher. Naruto's eyes glowed silvery one last time, and Yagura was suddenly attacked from all sides and squeezed into the size of a tennis ball. Naruto released his ability, and the new ball fell to the ground with a loud thunk sound. He watched as the Edo Tensei started the healing procedure, but Yagura left this realm in a blast of white light before that could happen. Gravity manipulation. Why limit yourself to elemental manipulations such as simply pulling and pushing? All things have mass. Why not push and pull, twist and turn, squeeze and stretch? Yagura had been his first victim. His body had been target of multiple gravity fields from all sides, resulting in him being crushed into virtually nothingness. So much to improve, so much to learn, Naruto thought with a chuckle, looking at the frozen building, unaffected by gravity. Shinobi spent all their lives training to become strong, honing their abilities, and yet they barely scrapped the bottom of what they could do. The pinnacle of the fire release was to breathe fire, control the hotness and even range of the technique. How simple! Even a genin can spit a fireball, and we call masters to those who can manipulate this fire simply by changing their shape, power, and range. The pinnacle of water release is just that, spitting and controlling water. Hinata herself had spent her whole life focusing on her main element, and, while she is already regarded as the best water elemental, there was still so much to learn. She pushed so many barriers, but there was still so much to learn, to hone, to perfect. Immortality, that would give Naruto the time to hone every single of his abilities to their peak, their maximum power, their maximum efficiency. Great! Naruto thought with a chuckle. Now he sounded like Orochimaru and his eternal quest to understand everything. Naruto laughed at the absurdity of the comparison. He was broken from his thoughts when the sky was lit ablaze by a tailed beast ball. Naruto twisted his wrist and used his newfound skill to metaphorically grip the 10-story building. The ground shook briefly as the building broke in its foundations and rose into the air. Naruto effortlessly sent the colossal building towards the paths, like he was throwing a simple pebble stone. Yujuto and Rashi were squashed under the structure, unable to run away or protect their bodies against the colossal construct of rock. The village shook with the impact, and Naruto turned to the last path to be defeated. Utakata, the animal path, was the remaining enemy in the field before he moved to the final boss. Kuchi dash. Kamui, Naruto whispered before Utakata finished his summoning. He focused on his chest and ripped a hole where his heart was supposed to be. Utakata gave a surprised gasp and fell to the ground unmoving. Naruto approached the downed enemy and quickly dispelled the Edo Tensei, allowing Utakata to be free once more. Naruto felt a massive spike in chakra and watched as Madara summoned his perfect Susanoo in the distance. It was like Hinata had described it. Big. Imposing. Naruto saw Kurama get knocked down and finally immobilized by several trees. The blonde ran towards the site. It was time for him to step in and face Madara once and for all. With Madara, Kurama snarled, snatching the Uchiha midair and plummeting to the ground with his prey. Madara's Susanoo ribcage shielded him from Kurama's claws as both crashed into the ground of the Rain Village. I dreamt of this hour, Kurama said gleefully, showing a row of sharp teeth and pinning the Uchiha under his massive claws. The hour I could rip you to shreds, Kurama said, pushing the Uchiha farther into the earth, his ribcage shield cracking under the pressure. Madara focused on the bijou, his silver eyes glowing with power. The bijou allowed an arrogant smirk to grace his lips. You are foolish, Madara. Naruto and I are still bound together. I'm above your petty illusions now. Madara grunted before clasping both hands together inside his shield. The ground rumbled as trees burst forth, pushing Kurama backwards and entangling his limbs until he was trapped on the ground. Mokutan, wood style, Kurama whispered in sheer disbelief from the ground. Madara said nothing and slowly climbed to his feet, his ethereal shield disappearing from view. Honestly, Madara scoffed, and crossed his arms in front of his chest. What did you expect to happen? You think you could charge against me and crush me that easily? Please! You are nothing but a filthy beast, a mere chakra conglomerate. Madara smirked when he saw the bijou snarl and felt his power chakra twist in anger. With a deafening roar, the tree bindings were shattered and the great Kyuubi rose once more until he stood looking down at Madara from his imposing size. You will lose, Madara. And I will take great pleasure in being part of your defeat. Kurama snarled before jumping forward, the ground cracking and shaking with each step he took. Madara braced himself as he saw the Kyuubi get ready. The massive bijou broke into a run. Madara stood still, waiting patiently for the beast to get near him. Kurama raised a paw to the air and brought it down swiftly. A deafening shockwave rose from the impact, leveling the buildings around. Moments before Kurama had struck, Madara had jumped to the side and high into the air. He had avoided the shockwave by landing on Kurama's nose. The bijou roared in rage before furiously shaking his head to get rid of the parasite in his head. Madara started running around Kurama's body, much to the bijou's annoyance. Kurama threw himself to the ground and started rolling, trying hopelessly to squash Madara beneath his body. Madara simply ran around Kurama's body while he rolled on the flattened ground. With a swing of his tails, Kurama struck himself on the torso and finally managed to get Madara to jump away from him. Seeing the Uchiha in the air and without proper ways to outmaneuver, Kurama began charging his ultimate technique. Red and blue chakra filled the air above his mouth as it began converging into a single, menacing dark sphere. Bijudama, tailed beast ball. Kurama swallowed the dark sphere just before a pure reddish energy ball exploded from his mouth, heading straight to the stationary Uchiha. The Uchiha smirked before lazily raising a single hand towards the incoming energy ball. Shinra Tensei, he whispered, and the small pulse hit the energy ball and deflected it. He watched as the ball flew of and exploded in the horizon, filling the sky with a piercing red light, and a mushroom cloud formed not far away. Madara landed on the ground and watched as Kurama charged another attack. He launched another tailed beast ball, this one racing straight towards him and destroying everything in its path. Madara clasped his hands together in a praise sign. Mokutan Mokujihiki, doomed wall. A wooden dome rose in front of Madara moments before the tailed beast ball connected. The wood screeched under the assault but managed to hold on until the ball was deflected back into the air and once more exploding in the distance. I don't need my Rinnegan. I'm going to make you submit with my strength only, Madara said as he lowered the wooden barrier. His body was shrouded in a bubbling shell of blue chakra. Only 2 people had the honor of facing this. Behold, my perfect Susanoo, Madara said, and his chakra seemed to roar. With a blinding light that forced even Kurama to look away, his Susanoo had taken the form of a massive warrior, easily standing above in height when compared to Kurama. Foolish beast, Madara said before the warrior sprang forward and tackled the bijou head-on. The Susanoo wrapped his massive arms around Kurama's neck and wrestled the bijou into the ground. Kurama countered by gathering all his 9 tails and smashing them against the warrior, forcing the Susanoo to stumble slightly. Kurama took the advantage and slipped out of his grasp and jumped backwards to gain some distance. Kurama opened his mouth. More and more chakra seemed to be poured into the attack until the dark ball easily dwarfed the bijou in question. Bijudama, tailed beast ball. Kurama roared and pushed the titanic ball forward. The tailed beast ball charged head-on against a massive warrior who held his ground. The Susanoo bent his knees slightly and leaned forward as the ball approached quickly. Madara opened his large arms and gripped the large energy ball. The Susanoo's feet slid over the ground as the ball pushed backwards while the warrior struggled to push against it. Suddenly, the Susanoo managed to halt the ball's progress and lean backwards, finally directing the ball into the sky. The sky lit in fire. A light so bright that washed over the entirety of the Rain country, and could even be seen by the neighboring countries. Madara regained his footing and turned the Susanoo back to Kurama, who looked with a shocked face towards Madara. Why you deflected my strongest attack with raw strength only, Kurama said, shock written in his face. Madara sneered before jumping forward and sending his right arm forward. Kurama was still shocked, or perhaps he wasn't fast enough to react. Kurama caught a right cross to his jaw, making the bijou stumble from the impact. Kurama shook his head to avoid the dizziness. The Susanoo, however, didn't stop, and continued his vicious assault on the bijou. Another punch to the other side of the face, a sweep of his legs forced Kurama to the ground. The Susanoo rose his foot and slammed it against Kurama's throat, finally pinning the bijou to the ground. He dispelled his perfect Susanoo and summoned several trees to keep the Kyuubi trapped on the ground. The trees wrapped all his legs, his tails, and even wrapped themselves around his snout to prevent Kurama from opening his mouth. You see, Kyuubi, how weak you are compared to me. Madara shook his head in amusement, walking until he stopped and stared straight into the eyes of Kurama. He could see the hatred the Kyuubi bore for him, and the thought alone made him chuckle. You, who have so much pride in your tails, were defeated by a mere human, pathetic. Raisin Shuriken, Madara's eyes widened when he saw the big spiraling chakra ball heading towards him. He quickly jumped backwards only to see that the intended target was not him, but the trees trapping the bijou. Madara grunted in annoyance as he saw the bijou free once more. No time to sleep. Madara's eyes opened instantly to see Naruto standing in next to him, red markings spread across his face, and 2 more spiraling chakra balls in his hands. Raisin Shuriken, Naruto replied, unleashing the 2 attacks at point-blank range. Both Madara and Naruto exploded in a spiraling dome on wind chakra that tore everything in its path. Once the attack died down, Madara stood in the middle of the blast zone, both hands raised signaling that he had been absorbing chakra from the blast. Bastard, you almost killed me with that! Madara chuckled, looking at the original Naruto next to the Kyuubi. You did well, Kurama. But the rest is up to me, Naruto said softly, running a hand over Kurama's fur. The bijou said nothing and simply disappeared in smoke, going back to the seal. Naruto turned back to Madara, who stood there simply watching him. It's only the 2 of us now, Naruto said, walking until he stood a few feet from Madara. Perhaps, Madara commented and slowly raised his right arm. Naruto narrowed his eyes when he saw Madara do 1/2 of a hand seal and simply stop as if waiting for something. Naruto's eyes widened slightly when he realized what Madara was waiting for. A smile tugged his lips as Naruto brought his arm upwards and performed the same thing, mirroring Madara. The Teretsu no In, seal of confrontation. No more words were spoken as both shinobi jumped forward and their fists met with loud bang. The real battle had begun. With the allied shinobi forces away from the village now, Hinata yelled to the remaining forces of the allied shinobi army. Suddenly the grumbled and the sky was lit ablaze, pushing the clouds away and vaporing the rain. She heard yells and shrieks from several shinobi as everyone moved even faster away from the village. Everyone was running without looking back when the sky was filled with a light so bright that almost everyone stumbled, their eyelids unable to block the piercing light in the sky. Good luck, Naruto-kun! Hinata bit her lip and kept moving forward without looking back. There was nothing she could do. With Naruto and Madara, their fists met with a deafening bang. Madara threw a fast left jab only for Naruto to parry his strike to the side and counter with a jab of his own. Naruto aimed for his throat, attacking with crippling and deadly strikes right from the beginning. However, Madara simply tapped Naruto's arm away, making him miss the target and swing past Madara's head safely. As they both countered each other like mirrors, they found themselves in a stalemate. Both shinobi locked with each other, struggling to overpower their adversary. The ground rumbled and cracked, the water rippled as their chakra saturated the air, giving them a feeling of heavy pressure, as if they were twins, or maybe it had been the Sharingan's predictive abilities. Both Naruto and Madara managed to free the same arm and went for a strike. Their palms stopped a few inches from each other. Their eyes met, silver clashed against silver as both shinobi bellowed, Shinra Tensei. Both shinobi held their ground as the gravity pushed against each other. Madara and Naruto poured chakra into their technique, as to lose would be a sign of weakness. There would be no finesse in a battle like this. When you reach this level, only power matters. Their fingers moved and twitched as if the slight movement increased their power and control. Their faces twisted into one of deep concentration as more chakra was poured into the push. The ground cracked as they started sinking to the earth, the ground no longer able to support their massive pressure. With one final push, they were both blasted backwards. They stumbled through the ground until they regained their footing and once more made a beeline towards their opponent. Moments before their fists met once more, Naruto vanished in a yellow flash. Madara turned and quickly sidestepped as Naruto appeared behind him with a blue sphere in his hands. Madara snatched Naruto's wrist, driving the Rasengan away from his body, and retaliated with a right cross. Naruto tilted his head to the side, Madara's fist grazing his cheek. Naruto's free hand sparkled with lightning as he went for the finisher. Madara had one hand busy and had overextended with his other. Raikiri. He thrust his arm only to be met with a silvery barrier around Madara. Gakido, human path. Madara started absorbing Naruto's strike, neutralizing his attack. Naruto smirked through Madara off the loop until he saw a pitch-black rod burst from Naruto's extended palm and head straight towards his heart. Madara recoiled out of reflex and shielded his body with his arms. In a burst of chakra, Naruto was pushed back as Madara's Susanoo rose to life. Naruto backflipped a few times to gain some distance and stared impassively at his opponent. First blood, he said, looking at the bright red liquid dripping from Madara's arm. The wound seemed long gone, but the blood was evidence that Naruto had at least wounded him. Madara didn't seem to acknowledge Naruto and simply stared at his right arm. He channeled a small amount of chakra and a small seal appeared on his skin. I hate Tobirama for inventing that blasted technique. Madara grumbled in thought and absorbed the seal's chakra, permanently destroying it. His heart beat with elation. Hashirama had matched him so long ago, but that was before he had awakened the Rinnegan. Next was Hinata, but even she quickly exhausted herself to match his full power. Only Naruto was matching him fully and sometimes ever surpassing him. It was nice to see his long plans coming to fruition. His hands flew to the horse hand seal. Naruto watched Madara take a deep breath but stood his ground. Katon Goka Mekyaku, Great Fire Annihilation. From Madara's mouth came a sea of fire. The flames charged against Naruto like a dragon. Naruto's hands flew towards the same seal as he replied with the same technique and both flames met in the middle. The infernos clashed against one another and Madara quickly understood that there would be no winner in this. His eyes glowed and his hands moved to another seal. Enten, Inferno style. Madara's white-hot flames quickly turned as black as night, engulfing everything in their path as they charged against Naruto. The black flames of Amaterasu, rumored to be hotter than the sun itself, melted the rocks. Naruto dropped his attack and charged head-on, running through the incoming flames with his Kamui ability. Madara summoned his black flames and could feel Naruto getting pushed back. Suddenly, Naruto's flames disappeared and Madara's eyes widened in disbelief when Naruto appeared from the sea of fire with his right arm extended forward. Madara reacted quickly and deflected his punch only for Naruto to stare at him. Kamui, the blonde whispered, and the next thing he saw was nothing other than darkness. Madara felt pressed from all sides. He could not breathe, he felt chains pressing around his chest, his eyeballs forced back into his head. With the remaining time he had before he was fully absorbed, he made a clone that quickly bumped him to the side. Madara watched with fascination as his clone was torn to shreds and absorbed into Naruto's dimension. All of this in the blink of an eye. Madara, however, knew very well how the Kamui worked. Amaterasu, he whispered swiftly, taking advantage of Naruto's solid state for a few brief moments after absorbing his clone. Naruto exploded in black flames and quickly fell to his knees crying in pain. Naruto absorbed the trauma, swallowing the pain and burying it deep in his mind. His first conscience was rage. Shinra Tensei, he hissed, and everything around him was blasted to smithereens. The black flames burning him evaporated, the wind was forced back alongside Madara and every single building in a mile radius. You underestimated him, Kurama said and watched as Naruto coughed and got back to his feet. Half of his face had been burned but was quickly healing back up. Naruto had not felt physical pain in a long time. In fact, he had never felt much physical pain after his early years. Naruto tore the remains of his upper sleeve and threw it on the floor. He took a calming breath, knowing the rage and anger would not give more power. He watched Madara digging himself out of the rubble from the previous blast. Raising shuriken, Madara looked up to see a spiraling shuriken flying towards him. He jumped to the side as the attack landed safely away from him and exploded in a dome of destruction. Madara felt a chakra spike and could look in astonishment as several more Raisin shurikens flew towards him. He jumped again, sliding through the ground as the shurikens missed him but destroyed anything that they hit. His chakra surged and his purple Susanoo enveloped him. Madara summoned his swords and proceeded to dismantle the incoming attacks with practiced ease. Enough of child's play, Madara growled, pushing more chakra into his ultimate weapon, the greatest ability of his Sharingan, and summoned his perfect Susanoo. Show me your true power, as you wish, Naruto answered neutrally. Silver chakra surged around Naruto, shrouding his entire body in a bubbling storm of energy. And like a requiem of destruction and power, a figure burst into existence, pushing the air back. It was completely silver in color, either too dark nor light, with the exception of completely pitch black eyes, so dark that they could be mistaken by hollow sockets instead of actual eyes. Long, shaggy white hair that reached its waist with sharp, jagged teeth and two massive horns protruding from its forehead. A samurai-like armor, forming robes, pointed shoes and body armor on its shoulders and waist. Over the armor, a large white garment and on his back, bony and featherless wings. Never forgetting the twin sides strapped to his back. The two titanic Susanoo stared at each other, each one bigger than mountains and more destructive than any bijou. They both sprang forward, the ground quaking with step. The earth shattered and the rain village was now nothing more than rubble littering the floor. Nothing stood higher than 10 feet of the ground. Their fists met with a shockwave that rocked the ground. Madara threw a left jab only for Naruto's Susanoo to phase through him. Impossible! He can use ninjutsu with his Susanoo? Madara's eyes widened in shock until he felt a powerful kick on his back. His armor dented ever so slowly as he twisted midair and regained his footing. Enten Goku Mekyaku, Inferno-style Great Fire Annihilation. Madara's Susanoo instantly brought his massive arms forward and shielded his face and upper portion of his chest against the dangerous ocean of black flames. His Susanoo fell to one knee. Madara felt the ridiculous drain on his chakra to continuously regenerate his shield against the black flames, even with his Senju-enhanced body. He looked to the side and saw the collapsed buildings melting into a puddle. The ground beneath bubbled as the rock turned red in color, and his Susanoo started to sink into the melted substance. Madara got a foothold and pushed forward, swinging his arms in a wide arc. The black flames receded slightly, giving enough time to punch Naruto, forcing his Susanoo to take a step backwards. If his Susanoo is superior to mine, then I need to take that out of the field, Madara thought to himself with slight resentment. He had always prided himself on using his perfect Susanoo as his ultimate weapon. But now it was obsolete compared to an equal shield who could use ninjutsu freely. Madara took the given opportunity and immediately performed 3 hand seals. Tenai Shinsei, Shattered Heaven. The clouds parted to show a massive meteorite plummeting towards both Madara and Naruto. It seemed Madara was willing to sacrifice his Susanoo if it meant he would take out Naruto's as well. From inside his Susanoo, Madara rose his hand to the sky. Bansho Tenin Universal Pull. He closed his fists tightly as if metaphorically squashing a bug in his hands, and pulled down, drastically increasing the speed of the incoming meteorite. The meteorite gained a white-orange color as the air around it burned due to the added speed. Madara kept his gravity pull, ever increasing its speed until the meteorite looked like a cataclysmic ball of fire coming down from the sky. It was like the Armageddon, the end of all things. Madara stopped his pull and was kicked backwards. Naruto drew his full attention towards the incoming threat. Naruto, Kurama said with a very serious tone. You need to stop that. A meteorite of that size and speed will annihilate the Rain Country in seconds. The fallout would most likely end all life on Earth. Kurama warned and Naruto nodded without hesitation. Naruto's Susanoo looked at the red sky and stood his ground like an unmovable object. He slapped both hands together and slowly drew them apart, a silvery sword appearing as he did so. He flicked the newly formed blade towards Madara, pushing the man back as he turned to deal with the meteorite. Jin-tun, dust release. The silver sword gained a vibrant white line over the cutting side. Surashu slash. He brought his sword to the sky in a wide, sweeping stroke. A pure white, crescent-like wave was unleashed towards the meteorite. The wave cleaved the meteorite cleanly in half as if it were the easiest thing in the world. Before dispersing, the white wave exploded in a blast of white light, completely disintegrating the remaining halves of the meteorite. The sky was bathed in white light as the incoming doom was permanently halted. This is the end, Naruto said as Madara brought himself to his full height. Naruto quickly absorbed natural energy, boosting his already extremely powerful chakra. His Susanoo started glowing softly, gaining a red hue around his shell and the same red markings adorning its skeletal face. The sky sparkled as Naruto drew in natural lightning for his final attack. Naruto's Susanoo coiled, almost like a snake, and sprang forward leaving a trail of destruction on his step. Naruto's Susanoo blitzed through the ground with unavoidable speed. Madara crossed his arms in front of him and braced himself for the attack. He channeled chakra to his arms and frontal chest plates. The heavens roared with lighting and Kirin burst from the sky and wrapped itself around Naruto's Susanoo fist. Raken, lightning fist! The moment it struck was like a powerful thunder in sky. The lightning and senjutsu-empowered Susanoo punch instantly shattered Madara's crossed arms and turned his chest into fine powder. Madara's perfect Susanoo exploded in a shower of light, as if it had been made of simple fragile glass. Once the light dimmed down, there was no sign of Madara's Susanoo. However, Naruto's remaining senjutsu allowed him to find him, buried in the ground. Naruto dispelled his Susanoo and dropped to the ground, a wave of dizziness coming over him. I hope you realize that the amount of chakra you used in that would have killed anyone else. Kurama chuckled, pushing small bits of chakra to quickly fix Naruto. Naruto regained his breath and approached the fallen Madara. The man was broken, it was clear as day, but he was still very much alive. So much P-power. Madara coughed a mouthful of blood as he pushed the rubble away and shakily stood up. I hope you enjoyed my Sharingan's full power. Not even Nagato pushed me to use Senjutsu, Naruto commented. Madara suddenly drew his head back and started laughing madly. This is a dance. I can feel my heart hammering in my chest, my blood singing in my veins, Madara yelled before calming down and licking the blood from his lips. I suppose it's time for my trump card. Madara smirked, and Naruto raised an eyebrow in interest but was immediately on edge. A trump card of Madara's caliber was to be taken with caution. With the retreating allied shinobi army. My god! A random shinobi stuttered, feeling the overwhelming chakra washing over the Rain country. He looked over his shoulder in fear and nearly stumbled as he ran from the Rain village, or what remained of it at this point. He could feel the intense pressure of their chakra even miles away. He could feel the ground shaking, the shock waves echoing, and even had to shut his eyes due to the blinding explosions of energy in the sky. They are not human, he said to himself, and could only watch as a meteorite appeared in the sky. This is bad, Tobirama said, looking at his fellow dragons as they ran away as well. We cannot outrun that. If it hits, it's over for all of us, Tobirama commented. Naruto will stop it, Hinata replied with conviction without looking back. In truth, she had been watching the combat since the very beginning. Her Byakugan had more than enough range for that. Tobirama's worries were cut short when the meteorite exploded in white light. Told you, she replied with small satisfaction. Suddenly she stopped running and froze altogether. Several shinobi stumbled and fell to the ground since she stopped so suddenly. What's wrong? Tobirama asked, placing a hand on her shoulder. Tobirama was blasted back by some invisible force. All around the shinobi stopped running and made a wide circle around her. What happened? Jiraiya asked, hurrying to Hinata's side while Minato went for Tobirama. Don't touch her, Tobirama warned loudly, and Jiraiya retracted his hand as if it had been burned. Argh! Hinata brought her hands to her head and started screaming. Her chakra flared, pushing everyone backwards. Her hair started flickering between white and dark blue, and her eyes did the same pattern between her tensigen and some purplish color. She spiked her chakra even further, enough to start manifesting a purple aura around her body. The shinobi army increased the distance even further and recoiled in a mix of fear and caution. She roared again and her chakra lashed out once more. Bones burst from the ground and nearly skewered several shinobi. Shit! Get back! Get back! Minato cried as everyone scrambled away from her, leaving only Minato, Tobirama and Jiraiya standing the closest to her. Hinata dropped to one knee and turned towards Tobirama. Impossible! Tobirama looked in disbelief at Hinata, who now bore the tensigen in her left eye and a rinnegan in her right eye. Arg! Hinata roared once more. The ground cracked as her chakra saturated the air, and she clutched to her head to try and fight whatever was happening to her. With one final shockwave, she stopped struggling and lowered her hands to her sides. Hinata? Tobirama called out. The girl turned to him and now bore two rinnegans, one in each eye. Hinata rose a single hand and spoke with a very familiar voice. Shinra Tensei, Tobirama, Minato and Jiraiya were blasted at point-blank range and dropped into sweet unconsciousness. With one final smirk, Hinata dashed towards the battle between Naruto and Madara. With Naruto and Madara. Trump card? Naruto asked with caution, but Madara said nothing more. The small smirk gracing his lips was cause of worry as it was. What dash? Naruto's question was interrupted when something smashed against the side of his face. He was sent flying, stumbling through the ground and walls until he finally came to a stop a few feet away. Naruto shook his head, pushing away the dangerous unconsciousness. What hit me? Naruto asked with confusion, his vision still blurry. He felt a metallic taste in his mouth, which was without doubt blood from the impact. But he also felt something extra. He spat it to the ground and found himself surprised to be looking at one of his molars, still bloodied and everything. Damn, Naruto said, licking the bloody hole in his mouth. He got up only to come face to face with Hinata. What dash? He forced to duck as Hinata engaged in a taijutsu battle against him. What are you doing? He asked in shock as he dodged another fast palm strike. It was then he noticed her eyes, a pair of Rinnegan eyes staring right into his own. But how? Naruto asked in surprise as he tried his best to dodge Hinata's attacks until she fell backwards and stood next to Madara. May I present you my final path? Madara rhetorically, gesturing towards Hinata with no small amount of pride. Senju Hinata, Jinchuriki of the Nibi, the Deva path, what have you done? Naruto snarled and was about to charge forward until Madara made a stop sign. Easy now, Madara said, fondly tracing Hinata's jaw with a single finger. You wouldn't want to harm your precious wife, would you? He asked with a smirk while Naruto raged inside. How? Naruto snarled. How you ask? Madara asked with amusement. It's simple, really. My kidnapping of Hinata served several purposes. One of them was placing a small black chakra receiver in her heart, Madara said, and Naruto's eyes widened in shock. But how did she not notice? Naruto asked out loud. Let's be honest. Madara grew serious once more, his outgoing attitude forgotten. You, as a shinobi, have no weakness. However, as human being, you have one very easily identifiable weakness. And that is your love for her. Even a blind man could see the bond you two share. And this particular weakness is so very easy to exploit, a small medical procedure to implement a chakra receiver around her heart. She never noticed it because the soreness she felt after our battle, Madara commented, feeling it had been one of his greatest moments. She has a very powerful chakra, but not enough to fight against mine. Maybe a few more years and I would have been unable to control her. Madara finished and Naruto was shaking with anger. I'm going to break you, Naruto roared. Come, Madara taunted as Naruto blitzed towards him only to be intercepted by Hinata. Hinata easily caught Naruto's fist and replied with a fast punch. Naruto used his Kamui, forcing Hinata to lose her grip on him. Naruto took a step back, avoiding a fast right hook and immediately ducked under another jab. Naruto dropped to the ground and rolled to the side as Hinata countered with a spinning kick. Did you reach Matatabi? Naruto asked, hoping desperately that Kurama had managed to contact either Hinata or the Nibi. No. His chakra is suppressing the Nibi, I can't reach her. Kurama grumbled in reply, watching his host dodge every single of Hinata's fast swings and leg strikes. You need to neutralize her, you think? Naruto bit back harshly. Don't snap at me. I'm trying to help. Kurama retorted back, not even offended by Naruto's rough answer. Shit. Naruto cursed as Madara joined the taijutsu battle and Naruto found himself easily getting pushed back against two highly skilled hand-to-hand combatants. Naruto grabbed Madara's wrist and used his arm for leverage, sidestepping Hinata's strike. He took a step back and gently deflected Hinata's chakra punch towards Madara, who simply ducked under the swing. Shinra Tensei. Both users bellowed at the same time, catching Naruto in the middle of them. He used his Kamui to split past the shockwaves. Katan Goka Mikyaku, Great Fire Annihilation. Naruto took a deep breath and unleashed his traditional sea of flames, hoping to distract them momentarily. Suetun Baku Swishuha, Great Exploding Water Wave. A tornado of water roared into existence and crashed against the flames, snuffing them out in a moment's notice. While fire and water clashed against one another, Madara had quickly moved around the jutsu and attacked the blonde from behind. Naruto was forced to drop his fire jutsu and engaged Madara in battle. Meanwhile, Hinata kneeled on the ground and started running through hand seals. Hijitsu Mugen no Aim, Secret Technique, Endless Rain. Rain had come. The night sky, previously depleted of any clouds due to the constant blasts of energy, was now clouded as rain started pouring. The still hot ground from the fire blast sizzled when in contact with the cold rain. Hizujin no Jutsu, Flying Water God Technique. Hinata whispered before vanishing into thin air. Oh shit. Naruto cried when Hinata appeared in front of him with bones protruding from both palms. Naruto ducked under a swing of Hinata's arm. She vanished and materialized herself behind him. Naruto tilted his head to the side, allowing another strike to pass by harmlessly. Naruto, still ducked, swung around and swiped Hinata's legs. Hinata jumped in the air and instantly vanished from sight when Naruto rose for a strike. Without looking back, Naruto sidestepped a strike and grabbed Hinata's outstretched arm. Shinra Tensei, she replied, forcing Naruto to dodge with Kamui and released his hold of her. She jumped backwards and sided with Madara once more. Something is wrong, Naruto thought, looking carefully at Hinata and taking in everything about her. What about it? The fox raised the question. Madara isn't in full control. I noticed a small flicker in her eyes. A path is nothing but a puppet. Madara may control the puppet but never be able to use the puppet's unique skills. He couldn't know about her latest technique. Naruto mused in thought. Regardless. You need to end this. This has been going for too long and even you are getting low on chakra, Kurama advised. Naruto could spend all of his chakra even if he possessed large chakra reserves and had a bijou inside. What the blonde didn't realize was that his supposed expendable techniques were a set Jounin's chakra reserves each time. She won't be easy to pin down now that she has her version of the Hiraishin, Naruto thought grimly. Of all the times for her to develop her own space-time technique, it had to be days before the enemy managed to control her. Rinbo, Hengoku, Limbo, Border Jail. Madara's eyes glowed and he projected 4 shadows. Naruto felt a shiver crawl up his spine when he saw 5 Madaras and 1 Hinata running towards him. He couldn't use high-powered techniques without dealing with Hinata first. She was still in there, trapped inside and could feel everything. The original Madara stopped and clasped both hands together while the clones charged against Naruto. Mokutan Jukai Koten, Deep Forest Creation. The ground rumbled and a stamp of trees charged forward. Tomigoroshi no Haikatsu, all-killing ash bone. Hinata halted her progress and fired several hardened bones against the blonde who remained immobile. Naruto closed his eyes in concentration, but even through the eyelids you could see an unusual glow in his Rinnegan. On Mayatan Inyang release, Naruto began, putting the palms of his hands slightly apart. A small, whitish-colored and translucent ball appearing between his hands. Bansho Kyoma, nihility of all creation, he bellowed, clasping his hands together. The air around him rippled as the small ball was crushed between his hands. By removing the physical composition, or the yang chakra, Naruto could reduce everything into nothing. There was no epic blinding light, or even a loud bang of destruction and death. The ground did not shake or tremble, but the effect was clear nonetheless. The flying bones vanished moments before coming in contact with Naruto. The sea of trees seemed to evaporate, as if they were never there in the first place. Even Madara had stopped his attacks completely befuddled to what he had seen. Things didn't disappear into thin air. Naruto opened his eyes, his Rinnegan glowing as he disappeared from view only to appear a few meters away from the original position. His right arm extended with a black metallic rod protruding from his hand. To the naked eye, nothing had happened, but to Madara, it signaled the fall of his first shadow. On Mayatan Inyang release, Naruto repeated and plucked 3 hairs from his head. Chibunshin no Jutsu blood clone. They floated and started glowing. Each hair formed a ball until it started expanding into a humanoid form. Their skin started bubbling as several details became apparent: blonde hair, whisker marks on his cheeks and silver eyes to match. Eliminate the shadows, Naruto ordered, and the blood clones nodded and disappeared. Blood clones were actually made of bone and flesh, and living in every sense of the word. However, they were nothing but empty shells, deprived of soul since Naruto's soul was still in the original vessel. These clones were weaker, but more durable and enough to deal with these shadows. I see, Madara acknowledged in thought. So these are the abilities of a perfect Rinnegan. Time and space manipulation. Creation and destruction. Madara's chakra surged forward once more, and for the third and final time, his perfect Susanoo rose into existence. Next to him, the water started getting restless. It seemed that the entire water in the whole rain village was vibrating. The water started moving, as if it had a mind of its own, and started congregating near Hinata. The water linked with Hinata and started climbing its way through her body. It started at her feet and moved up over her legs until her whole body was covered in water from head to toe. More and more water rushed towards her. From deep underground, from the surface, from the air. Mere seconds into it, and Hinata's body had been hidden behind a massive water sphere. The sphere started shaping itself into a humanoid form. The main body of water seemed to remain afloat, while 2 arms and legs were molded. This water elemental was big, as it stood side by side with Madara's perfect Susanoo, both equals in height. The elemental had 2 long, sweeping arms that reached ground level. His head was flat, with no apparent nose nor mouth with the exception of 2 glowing white orbs, which Naruto figured to be its eyes. This water moved frantically like it was in constant motion. You are at a disadvantage, Madara commented from his Susanoo since Naruto had yet to summon his. He had been busy admiring Hinata's elemental. It's 2 against 1, you are wrong, Naruto replied with a small smile, making Madara raise an eyebrow in interest. I have never been alone, it's been a while, Kurama said from his mind, watching his vessel approach him and raise his fist. Indeed, Naruto agreed with a grin mirrored by the fox. Their fists met. His clothes flared briefly before his form was shrouded in a cloak of yellow flames. His whiskers had darkened and his whole body seemed to be surrounded by fire. Susanoo/Susanoo. Both Naruto and Kurama called simultaneously. Their combined chakra surged forward in an explosion of power. A golden warrior shimmered into existence, easily toppling Madara's Susanoo in size. It seemed a hybrid between Kurama and Naruto's Susanoo. The hands had been replaced with razor-sharp claws. The head had stretched and flattened a little bit, giving it the form of a snout and a more feral look. And while the wings had remained, the perfect Susanoo now also supported 9 glowing tails swaying wildly behind his back. Naruto's Susanoo got on all 4 as if ready to pounce. But even in all 4, the sheer size was enough to match the 2 titans in front of him. Madara was about to unsheath his sword when Naruto roared and pounced on him, tackling his Susanoo by the waist and throwing both of them to the ground. Madara could see the sharp fangs up close as Naruto grinned darkly. Naruto's tails secured all of Madara's Susanoo to the ground as he began his relentless attack on Madara, sending punch after punch. Anyone on the battlefield would be able to hear the resounding punches and the following cracking sound each time a fist connected. Hinata jumped on top of Naruto, using her water body to weigh Naruto down and wrapped her long water arms around his form. Naruto's vicious attack had halted as he struggled to move his arm against the iron-tight grip of Hinata's elemental. Naruto's chakra flared in a shockwave of power. Hinata's elemental exploded in a shower of water, but it had provided enough time. Madara managed to free his right leg and used it to kick Naruto from him. Naruto flipped midair and landed gracefully on all 4. Madara rose up and charged forward, the earth shaking in protest with each step he took. Each punch he threw, Naruto blocked with precision, and the aftermath was a powerful shockwave. They continued their fierce battle, each unable to gain any advantage. Any damage they inflicted upon each other with simple punches would be restored almost immediately. Meanwhile, Hinata's elemental had reformed as she ran forward once more, pushing Naruto back while Madara recovered. "I'm ending this," Naruto thought to himself. His chakra was running low. Even with Kurama, taking on Madara had been more taxing than he had ever imagined. "Shinra Tensei," he bellowed, pushing the titans backwards. Hinata exploded once more while Madara stumbled backwards and fell to the ground. Naruto dispelled his Susanoo and dropped to the ground, channeling all of his concentration and chakra into his next technique. Naruto flew high into the air until he stood further from both the Susanoo and the water elemental. The ground did not vibrate or tremble. It didn't even shook. What came next could not be described with simple words. It was as if the entire planet shuddered. The ground shook so much that not even Madara's Susanoo managed to stand. Naruto rose his hand into the air and the entire rain village, or what remained of it, was ripped from the earth and rose into the air. Both Hinata and Madara slid of the flying chunk of rock and landed back on the crater, while the titanic chunk of rock rose further into the sky. Madara simply looked in shock at the display of power. The Rain Village wasn't a great nation, but it was by no means small. The village was at a few dozen miles wide, and to simply see it raised into the air as if it weighed nothing. The chunk of rock stopped climbing and Madara looked at Naruto, who still had his hand raised. Naruto dropped his hand and the previously stale airborne city started falling back to earth. "He plans to crush us both," Madara realized when he saw the plummeting rock. But there was nothing he could do. Any attack he performed with his Susanoo would not even dent something of that size. And he wouldn't be able to outrun it either. Madara watched the rock approach and braced for impact. The sound almost seemed muffled as the village hit the ground with a titanic explosion. First was the shockwave, vaporizing any water nearby and completely flattening the surface with the exception of the crater. Next came a cloud of dust that covered the entire area, leaving Naruto with zero visibility on what had happened. Naruto waited for the cloud to dissipate and looked around. There were no sign of Madara, but neither Hinata. He was about to absorb natural energy to try and sense them when he heard a small bubbling sound. He saw water coming through several cracks on the ground until it reached the surface. It was with a mix of relief and surprise that he saw Hinata reforming. But he shouldn't be that surprised. Since she developed her water body technique, physical attacks would rarely work against her. That and the bloody rain had returned. He felt a small flicker of chakra and saw Hinata disappear. Hinata appeared behind him and thrust her arm forward, her white bone piercing through his chest cleanly until her palm stood in contact with his back. Naruto felt himself crumbling into dust. "Perfect," he whispered, and his Rinnegan glowed once more, mere moments before he completely turned to dust. Kuranosu, God of Time. Naruto's time ability went to work and everything started rolling backwards just like someone who had pressed the rewind button on those old movies. His body started reforming as Hinata pulled her arms backwards and vanished into her original position several feet away. Naruto's eyes pulsed and everything returned to normal. But this time, Naruto knew the future. As expected, Hinata rose into existence behind the blonde with her arm coiled for an attack. However, this time a second Naruto appeared behind her and looped his arm beneath Hinata's and over the back of her neck. Chidori Nagashi, the clone force lighting to course through Hinata's body to prevent her from escaping with her water body. The original Naruto grimaced and thrust his dominant arm forward. Raikiri, Naruto's hand sparkled with lightning as it went through Hinata's chest completely, taking out the clone holding her as well. The attack did its job and destroyed the chakra receiver in her heart. Naruto collapsed to the ground with Hinata in his arms. Her eyes had returned to the traditional hollow look of the Byakugan along with her hair to the dark blue color. He placed his hand over the hole in her chest. Naraka Path. His hand glowed green and he watched her bones mending together, her flesh stitching itself until the wound was long gone. She took a deep breath and blinked. That hurt, were her first words, although the tone was much more playful. Took you long enough. Naruto laughed and got up with Hinata by his side. Some say a Raikiri to the chest is the fastest way to a girl's heart, he said while Hinata just laughed softly. They quickly remembered the situation and turned their attention of the enemy in the field. Madara Susanoo appeared to be digging his way out the ground. So not even that was enough to kill him? Naruto sighed, taking a long breath and running a hand through his long hair. I guess I will have to resort to that. No, Hinata said quickly, placing a hand on his chest in a stop motion. He could swear he saw a glimpse of fear in her face. If you lose control, it will be the end of everything. I won't lose control, Naruto said, but Hinata remained adamant. Trust me, Naruto said softly, taking her hand. I would never risk this if I didn't know I could pull it off. Naruto explained and Hinata nodded slowly. Keep him busy, the blonde said, and Hinata nodded, dashing towards Madara in order to keep him busy for a few minutes. Are you sure? Kurama asked quietly. You as well? Naruto asked in disbelief. Forgive me if the state of this planet and the surrounding universe is of small concern. You will destroy everything should you fail, but I guess either way Madara is going down, Kurama replied sarcastically. Give me the rest of your chakra, Naruto asked, and the Bija muttered a few profanities before giving the remnants of his chakra to the blonde. Kurama walked back towards his cage and curled together. Naruto took a deep long breath, filling his lungs with oxygen and releasing it slowly. He closed his eyes and buried the sounds of Hinata's battle with Madara deep into his mind. He placed his arms slightly apart, his palms facing each other. He opened his eyes slowly and focused on the empty space between his hands. Jurioten, gravity release. His pupils dilated and the space between his hands started turning, twisting, until a very small black sphere appeared. It was so very small, the size of a simple pea. Tokitem, singularity, he whispered. And as if the small sphere had understood his words, it gave of a small glow before vanishing from sight. Oh Kami, here we go. Don't blow up. Don't blow up. Don't blow up. Kurama chanted in his mind, covering his eyes with his paws. To control gravity was to manipulate the very force that bound existence together. For it could mimic the gods of creation by forging moons, planets, stars, universes, or destroying them. Naruto's previous techniques were child's play. The Shinra Tensei was weak, barely a few times stronger than Earth's gravity at surface level. Nothing more. Imbuing the gravity release with his Rasengan was destructive, but even then the gravity pull was nothing special. A gravitational singularity was different, and the pull, immeasurable. Hinata, Naruto shouted, breaking her fight with Madara. She quickly stopped whatever she was doing and rushed towards him. She looped a single arm around Naruto. This technique was a kinjutsu, forbidden technique, for only Naruto could survive it. The singularity didn't pick targets, it would suck and destroy everything with mass, and only Naruto could use his Kamui to keep the jutsu stable without dying in the process. Madara saw Hinata retreating and immediately gave chase, only to suddenly stop as if he was being restrained. His Susanoo pushed forward, but he made no advance. He looked backwards but saw nothing. And yet, he could feel something pulling him backwards. What is this? Madara asked out loud, feeling his Susanoo being dragged through the ground. He pulled two massive swords and quickly buried them in the ground for support. To his surprise, he saw the ground cracking and the very rock he held on for support breaking. The wind rustled furiously and swirled towards the center of the crater. Arg! Madara cried when his Susanoo swords broke, and he felt himself flying to the center of the crater as well. He could only look his disbelief as his perfect Susanoo crumbled into pieces. It started on his arms and legs and made its way towards the main body where Madara stood. His perfect Susanoo was being broken piece by piece until only he remained. It was then he finally understood. The pinnacle of gravity release. A singularity. A black hole. Gravity so powerful that not even light escaped its boundaries. Madara laughed as he flew towards his doom, knowing that there was no coming back from this, no forbidden technique that could save him. He did what any proud warrior would do, and smiled towards the death god as he was sucked in, and finally defeated. Meanwhile, Naruto was struggling to contain the immense power of his technique. The problem was not creating the singularity, the problem was containing it and after, disabling it. Naruto, Hinata yelled with a small amount of panic in her voice. The gravity range was increasing and the singularity was swallowing everything in reach. The water surrounding the village was being sucked dry, the clouds were converging into the epicenter. Naruto, she yelled and turned towards him, only to see a small trail of blood running down his face. Naruto's chakra network was rebelling against him. The sheer strain he was placing on his body was ridiculous. So much that even the latent genes to the Uzumaki clan were showing themselves, and his hair was losing his color, turning from blonde to pure white. Space twisted. And with one final push the singularity seemed to converge on itself and disappear with a pop. Naruto fell forward only to be caught by Hinata. "Naruto?" she asked in a voice filled with emotion. She knew very well the meaning of white hair in the Uzumaki clan. Don't worry." He coughed a mouthful of blood. "The F-Fox won't let me die of chakra exhaustion." He chuckled weakly and closed his eyes, breathing deeply. "I will be taking a nap now," he said before falling into deep sleep. A sleep without worries as the final enemy had finally been defeated. Although he wondered, in the end, why had Madara smiled at him. Chapter 68: The Legacy of Uchiha Madara. It had been a battle to remember. Where once stood the well-known Rain Village, there was now nothing more than a simple lake, hiding beneath nothing but a crater and chunks of destroyed buildings. Remains of metallic pipes and other surviving debris now rested on the bottom of the crater, completely filled with water. To any foreign people wandering the country, it would seem nothing ever existed in the land. A few days had passed and the aftermath was what many had hoped. Madara had been defeated in a not-so-easy battle, and Naruto was presently recovering in one of the many tents deployed around the village. Once the battle had ended, it was decided unanimously that they should camp a few days in the Rain country before moving out. This would give time for the shinobi to rest after the harsh war, heal any wounded shinobi, and the time to pack everything up, including cleaning the Zetsu corpses. Naruto had slept for 3 straight days and allowed his body to slowly recover and his chakra to replenish. Hinata had been adamant to never leave his side while he was in his weakened state, despite several people assuring her that no one would disturb him. And with Naruto asleep, there really was no one who could force her against her will. Really. Kakashi and Minato were walking towards the tent where both Naruto and Hinata have been staying. "Do you think you could ask Hinata to ease up on the rain?" Kakashi asked, looking at the dark sky and the pouring amount of water that followed. "Not likely," Minato replied with a laugh. Thinking back when Hinata had been controlled by Madara, there was no small amount of panic when they realized what had happened. The general consensus was for the main brawlers to go help Naruto until Tobirama had pounded some sense into them. "Gurh!" Minato was broken from his thoughts when he heard a retching sound. "What is this you are forcing me to eat?" Naruto's unmistakable voice came from inside. "Eat, you big baby." Hinata sounded somewhat exasperated. Minato smiled at Kakashi's snicker as both approached the tent. "Are you sure I can't have ramen? I'm sure Dad could flash to Konoha." Naruto pouted. Hinata's glare shut him up for good, and he returned to eating his dinner. His meal consisted of some brown paste with something that resembled chunks of meat. The sight was not appetizing and the smell ever less. "You two seem to be having fun." Naruto looked up to see Minato and Kakashi pushing the tent flap aside and coming in. "Yummy," Kakashi joked but was quickly silenced by Hinata's glare. As to what you are eating, Hinata huffed. It's a single-cell protein combined with synthetic amino acids, vitamins, minerals and fast-acting digestive agents. It has everything the body needs. Hinata finished, but all she received was blank looks. Of course it has, Naruto muttered as he continued to eat his nutritive soup. You know? I know you want to be cool as me, but you can't pull off the white hair, Kakashi said with a nice smile, earning a chuckle from the audience. A brief silence followed his words, and the only sound was Naruto's spoon running over the metallic cup. Naruto finished his meal. Can I get a moment alone with my dad? Naruto rhetorically asked. Kakashi nodded and absently walked away. Hinata was a bit reluctant to leave his side. I will be outside. Hinata finally agreed and walked outside. Stop, Minato said, raising a hand to stop Naruto from speaking. I know you are going to apologize or go into some speech about how sorry you are for killing my father, right? Minato asked, and Naruto nodded, somewhat surprised. The truth is that I was left alone in Konoha when I was very young. I have very few memories of my early years, Naruto. Minato sighed and sat down next to his son. He ran a hand through his hair before continuing. I know he loved me, and my mother very dearly. I remember that much, but after my mother died he snapped. I could feel the change in his black eyes, and that very same image is still imprinted in my mind. She was killed by Rain Shinobi, but I'm unaware of the circumstances. He had nothing before he met her, and even she was taken from him. You know what Tobirama said about Uchihas and their ability to show love. After she died, he trained me to the ground, sparred with me until I fell asleep with exhaustion. And the moment my eyes awakened, he stopped and dropped me off in Konoha, saying that he would not force his son into his path. I will remember him as a loving father, but the man that was defeated a few days ago was not my father. Minato finished sadly. Just another victim of a war-torn world. Naruto muttered when Hinata poked her head inside the tent. You have a visitor, Hinata said, and pulled the tent flap to the side, showing Uchiha Izuna being escorted by 2 shinobi from the rock village. What is his story? I do not remember him during the war, Naruto asked, motioning for Izuna to come inside, still escorted by the guards. Izuna did not fight in the war. He was found in one of the houses with the very same stasis seal as every citizen of the Rain village. Hinata explained. Naruto raised an eyebrow in interest and turned to Izuna, who remained completely neutral. You wanted to speak with me? Naruto trailed off. Alone, was the single word what came out of Izuna's lips. Neither Minato nor Hinata looked particularly pleased by his words. Gives us the tent, please, Naruto said as the 2 shinobi left the tent. You too as well, Naruto said, looking at Minato and Hinata. But Hinata tried to contest. I will be fine, Naruto replied. Hinata bit her lip but went outside and stood by the entrance with Minato. Naruto finally turned towards Izuna, who still stood with the same neutral expression. Do you hate me? He asked. Izuna seemed to have reacted to the question, and his eyes were immediately filled with blood-red color and spinning tomos. His face twisted into anger, and his fingers twitched before Naruto announced. Think things carefully, Izuna, Naruto warned, and Izuna watched Naruto's eyes being filled with a silver color and concentric circles. My body may be weak, but my chakra remains just as powerful. Izuna snarled and removed a single scroll from his inner pockets. He threw harshly at Naruto, who caught it midair. I'm leaving, Izuna announced, making Naruto look at him. I've known nothing but death since I was born. I'm leaving this life for good, he said before turning around and stepping out of the tent. He was immediately blocked by Minato and Hinata. Let him go. Just let him go, Naruto announced from the inside. Izuna scoffed at them and ran off, disappearing in the darkness of the rain forever. Naruto felt Izuna's chakra dimming and truly hoped that he found happiness with some girl in the end, just like Madara once did. Come inside, Naruto called, and both Minato and Hinata stepped inside the tent. He drew his attention back to the scroll in his hands. Some last trap by Madara? He pondered, flipping the scroll over several times in search for any trap. He turned it over once more until he noticed a small seal engraved in the opening lock. A blood seal? Naruto thought with surprise. A blood seal was as the very name said. A simple seal that locked whatever the user wished, and could only be opened by those blood related to the one who locked it in the first place. Naruto bit his thumb and placed a single drop of blood directly over the seal. The blood was absorbed into the scroll and the lock vanished in a small puff of smoke. Naruto carefully opened the scroll and started reading. I am not sure where to begin since I have never written anything like this. I suppose I should start by explaining who I am. My name is Uchiha Madara, former leader of the Uchiha clan. If my wish has come to pass, then you, Naruto, should be reading this, and I've long been sent into oblivion after our battle. I wrote this in the hopes of explaining the reasons behind my plans, and the decades of work I put into everything. You are the key, Naruto. I want you to finish what I started so long ago. This is the last will and testament of Uchiha Madara, son of Uchiha Taijima, 84th leader of the Uchiha clan. Where to begin? Where to begin? How about the very beginning? The world was embroiled in endless battles, an era of warring states. The one village per country system did not exist back then. Ninja organizations were militia groups, divided by clan name. Uchiha, Senju, Uzumaki, Aburame, Hyuga, Yamanaka, Nara, Akimichi, Fuma, Hataki, Shimura, Hozuki, Inazuka, Karama, Saratobi, Yatsuki, Yuki. The list went on and on, seeming almost endless. In this world of constant strife, power was everything. The Uchiha clan was known all over the world as a warrior clan with remarkable chakra and their powerful bloodline, the Sharingan. And then there was the Senju clan of the forest, said to be the only clan to rival the Uchiha clan in strength. Their leader, Senju Hashirama, was the most powerful ninja of his time. If one nation hired the Uchiha clan, the opposing one would hire the Senju clan. Time and time again, the Uchiha and Senju clans clashed against one another in a foolish war over supremacy. However, this endless fighting threatened to destroy both clans. Members who believed in this banded together and created a new organization. It would later be known as the Hidden Leaf Village in the Fire Country. But the Uchiha and Senju were like oil and water, unable to work together. Or so the stories had us believe. The truth is slightly different from what they teach in your academy. The truth is that I grew up considering Hashirama as both friend and enemy. We shared similar backgrounds, having lost family to war. We were both tired of it, but too young and weak to do anything. Time went by and we met in the battlefield each time, and each time we stood against each other as equals. Then came Izuna's death at Tobirama's hands. I never felt so much hatred for a single person. I felt it in my heart. My pain grew and my eyes reacted, blossoming into the Manjikyu. Armed with a new weapon, I charged against Hashirama and the Senju with all my might and anger. But in the end I was defeated once more. But to my surprise, Hashirama was willing to give up his life to change mine. I laid down my weapons and teamed up with Hashirama. Konoha was born. Years passed and I left the village, not for losing the Hokage position, but because of my pathetic and foolish clan. They wanted more. Of course they did. In retrospect, I should have seen it coming. The human greed never ceased to amaze me. The war had stopped, the world was blooming with peace and prosperity, but that wasn't enough for them. I warned Hashirama of my clan's ambitions and left the village. I stuck to the shadows and watched with grim eyes the flame of war sparking once more. War, it seemed, was ingrained in our very own DNA. It seemed that war was what made humanity. A long time ago, when people still didn't know anything about the concept of chakra, they still used to fight each other. Instead of chakra, they used swords and arrows. With the knowledge of chakra, you could say things become worse. In the end, the battles became even more gruesome. Hagoromo's vision was flawed. He spread chakra through the world in the hopes of connecting people. He wished for everyone to understand each other without words. He wanted to usher a new era of peace and prosperity with everyone understanding not only themselves but one another in a far deeper level than simply trading words. But he underestimated us, the humanity. We are flawed creations in the end. People didn't use the chakra to connect with others, but to instead connect their inner spiritual and physical energies together. They needed their inner chakra to amplify it and transform it into modern-day ninjutsu. In the end, they ended up using their chakra in battle, just as Hagoromo's mother Kaguya once did. I was lost. I did not know what to do. My family had died to war. Even when we achieved peace, the flame of war still carried on, coming from both outside and inside the villages. Hagoromo brought peace to our world once before. He gave us understanding, peace, harmony, a paradise on earth. But even with all that, humanity wanted more. I didn't know what the world needed anymore. Did it need peace and prosperity brought through love and kindness? Or did it require subjugation and domination brought upon by a dictator and tyrant? Since the first did not work, I went for the obvious alternative. But I needed to be stronger. I wasn't powerful enough to take on the world alone. I fought Hashirama for a piece of him, literally. But even with Kurama by my side, yes, I know your name, I lost. I wasn't surprised really. But what really shocked me was that Hashirama did not kill me. At the very end he looked at me and walked away. Neither of us could kill the other. I was terribly weak, injured and bleeding. Then she found me. Namake's Hanako, an ordinary civilian girl, the daughter of a small local fisherman. It's funny really. How the fate of the world rested on the hands of a single, seemingly mundane and unimportant woman. She found me. Dragged my unconscious and bleeding body to her house. She treated my wounds, fed me even when food was scarce, and pulled me out of my own darkness. She showed me kindness even when I offered her nothing but hate, resentment, and coldness. She was gentle, strong-willed, and kind to a fault. She valued her family just as much as me. I could see so much of her in Hinata. It's funny that both hers and Hinata's name were related to flowers. Hanako reminded me of what we were. Humanity may be flawed, but I had finally seen the goodness in some of them. But my vision of world peace through domination wouldn't allow the goodness in this people to flourish. So I changed my ways, going so far as leaving it all behind. Why should I the one to bring peace to the world? They had just as much duty as I had. I had found something else to live for. Hanako was my light, my love, my wife, my queen. Then death came for her. I held her in my arms as she left this world. And even in death she had a smile in her face. I had never felt so much hatred in my life. I slaughtered those Rain Shinobi, and my hate dimmed but still lingered. Hanako, she died because the world was at war. She was a civilian, she was innocent. She deserved a happy life, free of pain. Instead she was wounded by 4 Rain Shinobi and left to bleed out cold and alone. Minato was the sole reason I didn't march in the walls of the Rain village and ended their existence. I felt guilty. I felt that Hanako's death was my punishment for giving up on the world. So I carried on with renewed vigor, never forgetting the goal I wanted. I left Minato in Konoha. I didn't want him to follow my path. This was my burden to bear. I wanted him to have a complete and full life. I had an idea in mind. I had a plan. I would make the world stand against me. I would focus all their hatred, all their malice and will to fight on me. And so began my life plan. I grew old and my Rinnegan finally awakened. I had never felt so powerful in my entire life. I could finally feel everything. I could understand the pain of the world. I realized that the world would need a champion against me. They would need someone to defeat me and carry out the final piece of the puzzle. This person would need to be strong enough to stand against me and eventually defeat me. I believed there would be no better person than the one who would eventually become my grandson. I placed a genjutsu on several ninja of Kyumogakure and told them to kidnap one Uzumaki Kushina for her special chakra. What very people knew was that she was related to Hashirama, her granddaughter to be precise. I would recognize her chakra anywhere. I discreetly put Minato on her trail and watched with satisfaction the outcome I so desperately wanted. Mankind had their champion now. I grew old and chose another person to carry out my plan of world domination. Uchiha Fugaku, leader of the Uchiha clan. What better person to offer absolute power than the very ones that drove me out of Konoha in the first place? The Akatsuki rose and threatened the world. But you, Naruto, did your job almost too well and nearly stopped my resurrection. I pushed my plan forward and threatened the world with war. They came for me. They banded together against me. They focused all their hatred on me and charged against me and my army like a wrathful maelstrom. With my death, all that hatred has dissipated. The first part of my plan was finished. The last piece is up to you, Naruto. You need to guide them, usher them into an age of peace. With all that hate gone, they can finally focus on reconstruction and helping others. In the Valley of the End, look beneath the right foot of my statue. There you will find the entrance to my hideout. In there you will find Hanako's crypt along with several other things. Everything inside belongs to you. The original white Setsu survived Hinata's biological weapon. I'm leading him to you as well. I don't care if you cry, laugh or even hate me. I did what was necessary to save this world. I know of your plans for immortality and watching over this world. Allow me a parting gift. You will remember these words, sooner or later. Sometimes, to change the world, you have to be the villain. Uchiha Madara. Dad. Minato stuttered, a single tear running down his face. He walked out of the tent without a single more word. Even though he lost everything, he still sacrificed his life to try and change the world. Hinata sobbed, hiding her face between her hands. Argh! Naruto yelled in anger, sending the metallic food trail to the ground. Tobirama was right all along. Naruto screamed bitterly. We really are one cursed family. What will you do now? Kurama asked. He had been pretty silent during the whole time Naruto read the letter. Naruto pushed her covers away to get up. Stop, Naruto-kun. You are still very weak, Hinata said in a worried tone. Naruto stumbled, but Hinata caught him, hoisting his body on her own. I need to finish what he began, otherwise everything will have been in vain, Naruto said, straining his leg muscles, and walked out of the tent, leaning on Hinata for support. Naruto, what the hell are you doing? Minato yelled and rushed to them, helping Naruto stand on the other side. Call them all, Naruto said towards Minato. Call them all to me, he repeated, and Minato nodded slowly. I can stand, Hinata-chan, Naruto said, and detached from Hinata. He walked forward slowly until he stood where the supposed Rain Village once began, where the massive walls and gates once stood. All the surviving shinobi got out of their tents and quickly formed a group behind Naruto. It was the least they could do for the man that defeated Madara. Shinobi from all the villages and samurai alike gathered together, waiting patiently for what Naruto wanted to do or say. Hinata finally understood what Naruto wanted and stood behind him, placing a hand on his right shoulder. Minato repeated his action and placed a hand on his left shoulder. Slowly the action repeated itself throughout the army. Thousands upon thousands of shinobi linked their chakra together. Naruto could feel the chakra of every one single shinobi in the world. On Mayatan Inyang release, Naruto said, opening his arms. The clouds drew apart, and the sun shone in the rain country. His body was rejuvenated, and his hair regained his traditional blonde color. Creation of all things. Yin and Yang mixed, and new city rose from the ashes. This one possessing the chakra and will of every single shinobi in the world. A city unifying the different cultures and wills in a single unified banner. Republic City had been born. A place where civilians and shinobi from all nations could live and thrive together in peace and harmony. Chapter 69 Epilogue. 3 years had passed since the final battle between Naruto and Madara. 3 years, the 20-year-old Naruto said out loud, looking at dimming sun on the horizon. Nothing had changed in his appearance to the exception of a more rugged face and a couple inches in height. He stood clad in nothing but boxers, admiring the darkening sky from the balcony. After the war had been settled and the city was up and running properly, Naruto and Hinata finally had their small wedding ceremony, and were now enjoying their honeymoon in Spring Country. Republic City had become the capital of the elemental nations, the largest city in the world with a population of millions. Their gates were open to the world and anyone who wished to both visit and come to live in the large city. Republic City was home to a variety of iconic landmarks. A spacious city park, compliments of Senju Hashirama. At the very entrance of city stood 2 gigantic statues of Naruto and Madara, just like the ones in the Valley of the End. And at the center, the Shadow Tower, both home and workplace to the man who watched over the city. Otsutsuki Naruto, Shodaime Kage, first shadow of Republic City. No element was chosen to his title to remind people for what the city stood for. It was home for any shinobi, from any nation. They had finally achieved it. Peace. Otsutsuki Naruto. You read that correctly. Naruto chose to be named Senju back in Konoha to keep his clan name alive. But now both Hashirama and Tobirama were alive. He chose to honor Hagoromo and bring once more the ancient clan's name and reputation to life. He was after all his reincarnation, just as Hinata was Hamura's. Naruto, a sleep-roughed voice murmured seconds before he felt Hinata hugging him from behind. Come back to bed. He slowly turned around to face Hinata. She, like him, hadn't changed much. The biggest difference was perhaps her now longer hair, reaching her ankles in length. He wrapped his arms around her small frame and pulled her for a soft kiss under the dimming sun in the sky. Hinata leaned into the kiss and sighed in bliss. We spent the day in bed, he said as they separated. Hinata was looping her arms around his neck when Naruto caught her hand. They slid their fingers together, and Naruto brought Hinata's wedding ring between their faces. One ring to show our love. One ring to bind us, Naruto began and Hinata smiled softly. One ring to seal our love, and forever to entwine us. Hinata finished leaning for another kiss. Want to go down for some dinner? He asked, kissing her forehead gently. Sure, she replied and went back inside to get dressed. Knock knock, both Naruto and Hinata turned towards the door. 1 minute, Naruto replied, walking towards the bed and throwing a quick kimono on. Come in. The door opened and a well-dressed man stepped inside. From the badge on his shirt, Naruto deduced he was part of the hotel staff they were staying. I'm truly sorry for interrupting, Lord Naruto, the man said, bowing. Nonsense, Naruto waved him off. What is it you need? There is a man in the reception that wishes to speak with Lady Hinata, the man informed the couple. Did you tell anyone where we were coming? Naruto asked towards Hinata, who shook her head in denial. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and turned to the hotel man. We will be down momentarily, he replied. The man bowed and left the room. Wait, Naruto said, stopping the man from leaving. Did he give his name? Naruto asked. No, sir, the man replied and walked off. Naruto and Hinata came down from their rooms and entered the lobby to speak to this mysterious person. Whatever they were expecting, it certainly wasn't this. The man had pale skin with shaggy white hair and rather sharp, pointed features. He had 6 Magatama designs tattooed on his collarbones to resemble a necklace. He wore a white, high-collared kimono with a black obi, over which he wore a pale green sash tied at the right shoulder. On the back of his kimono was the Otsutsuki clan emblem of a yellow crest depicting a sun enclosed in a crescent moon. Great! Another fanba, Naruto thought grimly after looking at the man's attire. Naruto and Hinata were famous and known worldwide. It wasn't the first time some random person would dress up and try to talk to them. He even has my clan's symbol correctly, Naruto mused in thought. You wanted to speak with me? Hinata asked, stepping forward. The man smiled and extended his arm to her. I've come for you, Hinata, the man said. Come for me, Hinata repeated in confusion. She looked at Naruto, who shrugged his shoulders, but she could see a faint amusement in his face. Who are you? My name is Otsutsuki Tonari, Tonari replied with a smile. Of course it is, Naruto thought with a snicker. Why don't you open your eyes? Hinata asked with curiosity. Tonari smiled and lifted his eyelids to reveal nothing but hollow sockets. My eyes were removed when I was but child. They were sealed inside the Tensigen, a sacred possession of my clan, Tonari explained, and Naruto immediately lost his smile. His Rinnegan was common knowledge, but Hinata's Tensigen was not. Only close family knew of her eyes. And for a stranger to know of it in such trivial manner was worrisome. What do you want? Naruto asked sharply. This is a celestial decree. The final day is approaching. Before that day, I will come for you, Hinata, Tonari said moments before he shimmered out of existence. Anything I should know? Naruto asked with amusement. Hinata looped her arm around his as they walked to the dining room. They are getting more creative by the day, Hinata stated. Setsu, Naruto called out, and a white Setsu popped from the ground. Who is that guy? He asked. I have no idea, Setsu replied and sunk into the ground once more. Helpful. Few days later the world was getting chaotic with the number of meteorites coming down from the sky. Naruto, being the one in charge of the capital, was obviously informed that the moon was breaking apart, and the chunks of rock were raining down on Earth. Don't tell me I'll have to blow it up, Naruto mused out loud, looking at the bright moon in the dark sky. His powers had doubled since the time he fought against Madara, 3 long years ago. Destroying the moon would be rather easy, and creating another to take its place just as easy. You are not blowing up the moon, Hinata said with a sweat drop. Suddenly there was a small puff of smoke and a slug appeared in the middle of the room. Urgent message from Tsunade-sama, the slug said quickly, and Hinata rushed to the scroll. Naruto drew his attention back to the moon until he heard Hinata gasp in shock. What's wrong? He asked. Hanabi has been kidnapped, Hinata answered, reading through the remnants of the letter. What? By who? Naruto asked with both surprise and shock. No name, just his description, Hinata answered and began listing the description of the kidnapper. White hair, pale skin. Tonari, she hissed, thrusting her letter to Naruto. The fanbu? No way, Naruto said, quickly reading the letter as well. He was reading as fast as he could, but he could already feel chakra leaking from Hinata, and the room they were staying was already creaking in complaint. Hinata, calm down, Naruto said sternly. He has my sister. Hinata bit back, but Naruto didn't offended by her harsh words. He said he would come for you, right? Then we simply wait, Naruto said, and Hinata frowned. Easy for you to say. He could be hurting her, Hinata said sadly and sat down at the edge of the bed. As if speaking of the devil, a shadow was cast above the couple. Tonari was floating down from the sky on some golden platform. His previous hollow sockets now bore bright blue eyes. I've come for you, Hinata, Tonari said with a smile. Where is Hanabi? Hinata asked, getting ready to pound Tonari to the ground if necessary. Her Byakugan is so pure, Tonari said, gently running his fingers over his eyes. Question? Naruto interrupted before Hinata destroyed anything. Do you know who we are? She is Hyuga Hinata, the Byakugan princess. You, on the other hand, I have no idea, Tonari stated, and Naruto sighed. Figured as much. So you are the one behind the moon's destruction, Naruto said, running a hand through his long hair. Another enemy had appeared, and this one wanted to wipe out the whole world. It's your punishment for weaponizing chakra. You destroyed the world Hagoromo created long ago, Tonari said with conviction. I guess there is no choice then, Naruto sighed. My name, Naruto began, his blue eyes filling with silver. Is Otsutsuki Naruto? Tonari's eyes widened in mix of surprise and fear upon gazing at the Rinnegan. Why you can't have those eyes? Tonari snarled in anger. They belong to only one man. I will not let Hagoromo's legacy end in shame, Tonari said fiercely, his eyes glowing. Amanaka, Naruto whispered. The space surrounding all three shinobi twisted, and the hotel room where they stood was replaced by a vast desert full of sand dunes. Tonari blinked as his surrounding changed in the blink of an eye. He looked to the horizon but could find no end to the desert. What is this? Tonari asked in disbelief. What happened? Welcome, Tonari, to one of many dimensions I can access with my eyes, Naruto said, his arms gesturing towards the desert. You made a mistake in trying to destroy our world, and you are going to stop me? Tonari sneered. Not me. She is going to stop you, Naruto said, pointing to Hinata. Tonari raised an eyebrow and turned to Hinata only to pale at the visage he was seeing. Hinata had her own Tensigen activated, her long white hair billowing dangerously behind her back. 5 minutes later Tonari was lying broken and bleeding on the sand. You are a hypocrite, Tonari. You claim that destroying the world is our punishment for weaponizing chakra, and yet you use the very same weapons against us, Hinata said, approaching the fallen man. We won't allow you to destroy the peace we achieved. Something that so many people gave their lives to create, Naruto said, aiming his right hand to the defeated enemy, a small translucent cube appearing at the palm of his hand. Who are you? Tonari coughed a mouthful of blood, nearly choking on the amount. We are not heroes, Naruto began. We are not villains, Hinata added. We are what the world needs us to be. Watchful protectors, swords in the darkness, shields in the light. We are eternal guardians, they finished together. Naruto's dust release technique expanded and completely vaporized Tonari's body. Both watched as Tonari's body disappeared. Back in their home dimension, the moon stopped its approach. No one would know what had happened, why the moon had suddenly stopped. They didn't need to know. They were safe. Let's go get Hanabi, Naruto said. Space twisted once more and they found themselves in the moon, particularly inside the castle of Hamura. They easily found Hanabi in one of the rooms. Her eyes still bandaged from the eye surgery. Naruto waved his hand above Hanabi's face and restored her eyes. Let's leave this place, Naruto said, looping his arm around Hinata and returning to the earth, but not before leaving behind a small glowing white ball. The white ball exploded and destroyed everything inside the temple. Hamura's legacy was alive inside Hinata. There was no use for empty ruins. 5 years later Hinata yelled in pain, clutching to Naruto's hand. Come on Hinata, one more push, Shizen said, lifting her head to look at Hinata, her sweaty hair clinging to her skin. The reason Hinata was in pain was because she was giving birth to twins. Twins, 2 boys to be more precise. WH. Wah! A cry broke Hinata's concentration when she saw the firstborn. Come on, Hinata-chan. Only one more to go. Naruto joked next her, trying to lighten the mood. You wanna swap places? Hinata snapped, making Naruto pale when he saw her hair flickering between white and dark blue. Naruto very wisely shut up and remained to her side, holding her hand. A couple minutes later the room was filled with a second cry, making Hinata sigh in relief. Naruto smiled and his hand glowed green. Hinata turned to Naruto, giving a thank you smile when she felt her body being revitalized. Naruto didn't dare to do it during the birth process. Look at them! Naruto cooed, picking the bundle-wrapped boys and sitting next to Hinata. Thank you, Hinata-chan. Naruto smiled, feeling one of the boys wrapping his little hand around his finger. You better. I had all the work. Hinata grinned and Naruto laughed loudly. Don't cry, little guy. Naruto stopped laughing so loud when he saw the baby was about to cry. Aw, look at those little kittens. Matatabi drooled from inside Hinata, looking at the small humans. Have you chosen names? Shizen asked, stepping into the resting room after cleaning up. Naruto and Hinata looked at each other. Well, there's one baby for each of us. Naruto grinned while Hinata nodded. Madara, Naruto replied softly, gently rocking the small, black-haired boy. Oh, it's Satsuki Madara. Hinata smiled to herself. She knew he was going to choose that name even though he told people he still hadn't decided. What about your little guy, Hinata? Shizen asked, drooling over the other boy and his impressive mop of blonde hair. How about Ryu? Hinata whispered, testing the name. Oh, it's Satsuki Ryu, my little dragon. Shizen, can you give us the room? Naruto asked. Shizen nodded and stepped outside the room, leaving the fresh parents alone with their kids. Is something wrong with them? Hinata quickly asked the moment Shizen stepped outside. No, Naruto replied just as fast. Hinata took a deep breath to calm down. Naruto gently placed Madara on the bed next to his brother. He grimaced as his eyes were filled with silver, and he looked at both his sons. With my eyes, I can clearly see Indra and Ashura's chakra clinging tightly to them, Naruto said, and Hinata's eyes widened. She turned her own Tensigen only to realize the cold truth once more. Madara was Indra's reincarnation while Ryo was Ashura's. It seemed that once more they were destined to fight each other. What are we going to do? Hinata asked sadly while Naruto snarled in anger. No more, he said, placing one hand on top of each baby. You will not plague my sons. It's time to break the chain. I'm ending this curse for good. Naruto's Rinnegan glowed like nothing ever before. The room was bathed in silver as he started extracting the chakra of both transmigrants. Ashura came willingly, as if he had felt his father's pull and simply allowed Naruto to absorb him from Ryo. Indra was the complete opposite. He resisted, clinging desperately to Madara, but in the end he was also absorbed by Naruto. With both chakras finally dispersed, it marked the end of the feud between the two brothers. It's done, Naruto said, removing his hands and looking at the bright blue color of his son's chakra. They will be great on their own. Naruto placed the babies on their nasi that stood next to Hinata's bed. There is something else I wanted to ask you for a while, Naruto said seriously, sitting on the edge of Hinata's bed. Which is? I finally cracked it. Immortality, Naruto replied with a chuckle. After hours upon hours of reading biology and experimenting, he had done it. Really? Hinata asked with doubt. Look at this, Naruto said, and with no hesitation proceeded to chop off his left hand at wrist level. Hinata blinked and was about to criticize Naruto on his recklessness when the hand on floor crumbled into nothing. She drew her attention back to Naruto and could only watch with fascination as new hand regrew quickly. The bone grew back, followed by the flesh and finally being topped off by pink skin. How? Hinata asked with no small amount of disbelief. It's actually fairly easy. I just needed to break the Hayflick limit and couple that with a faster cell division, enhanced immune system, and we have the perfect vessel, Naruto explained, and Hinata could only nod. Which brings me to my question. Will you stand with me forever? He asked, making Hinata's eyes soften. Of course I will, knucklehead, Hinata replied softly. Excellent, Naruto cheered, taking care to keep the noise low and don't awake his sons. What about Ryo and Madara? She asked, looking at the peacefully sleeping babies. I will offer them the choice when they are ready, Naruto replied. Now get naked, he said, making Hinata blink in surprise. Naked? She asked, narrowing her eyes at the blonde. I need to apply a seal, Naruto said, completely oblivious to Hinata's suspicions. She sighed and removed her clothes, lying naked on the bed. Naruto-kun? Hinata asked, drawing the attention from his current work. What seal is this anyway? Hinata asked with curiosity. The seal was being drawn all over her body. The drawing itself seemed like a net all around her skin with some type of lock sitting right between the valley of her breasts, directly on top of her heart. This might sting a little bit, Naruto said and closed his eyes and opened them to show the Rinnegan with a silvery glow. Hinata was enveloped in a silver light, and she could feel tingling sensations all over her body. Her own Byakugan flared to life to notice what was happening in her body. Her eyes widened when she saw that every single cell in her body was being affected at once. Naruto seemed to be messing with the cellular division since Hinata recognized the patterns. Is he changing the proteins? Hinata wondered. She recognized that Naruto was messing up with her cells, but she didn't recognize what exactly he was doing or the ramifications it would bring. The glow seemed to die down, and Naruto placed his hand on top of the seal lock. Fuin seal, Naruto muttered as the whole seal array glowed whitish before dying down and disappearing completely from view, like he had never been there in the first place. Naruto hummed when he realized that Hinata had asked something. What did you ask again? Naruto asked, rubbing the back of his head. What seal is this? Hinata asked as she started getting dressed. Our body can regenerate itself completely as long as a single cell remains. This seal binds your soul to your vessel as long there is something of it left. It also differentiates between bodies, completely destroying the one without our soul. Should you ever be split into 2 or more pieces, and several bodies be regenerated at once, the seal will make sure only one body remains. Naruto explained, and Hinata nodded in fascination. He seemed to have thought this through. I give you the pinnacle of the sealing arts, Naruto said, taking a small amount of pride in his work. The Ion no Inochi Fuin, seal of everlasting life, well, at least for now. He added in afterthought. What do you mean for now? Hinata asked, stressing the last words. What I'm trying to say, Hinata-chan, is that we are freaks of nature, you and I, Naruto said, running a hand through his hair. Hinata raised an eyebrow at his declaration, but remained silent. Look at us. We are above the S rank now. Hashirama, Tobirama, Minato, Itachi now, all powerful shinobi, and yet we could crush them all almost effortlessly. I have a theory that you and I would become immortals regardless of our vessels and this seal. Naruto sighed. What makes you say that? She asked quietly. Our powerful chakra. We have grown too powerful to simply die and move on, Naruto said and stopped, letting the words sink in. When the day comes that we finally die, we could choose to reincarnate, like Indra and Ashura did, Naruto explained. But, Hinata said and stopped momentarily. But we wouldn't remember anything. All the memories and experiences that make us who we are would be lost. I suppose that might be true, Naruto conceded before grasping her hand tenderly. Regardless, I would find you when and wherever you stood. 20 years later, Naruto is 45. Naruto was strolling through the city park of the city, enjoying the fresh air and the small contact with nature. He nodded to those who greeted him as he walked through the cobblestone path until he reached the center of the park itself. In the middle of the park stood a single monument. The stone was white marble, and it resembled some type of coffin. By the monument stood 2 shinobi, one on each side, with perfect posture. Naruto walked towards the monument, stopping behind the wire that surrounded the monument. Tomb of the Unknown Warrior in Memoriam, the world's unknown warrior killed in the 4th Great Shinobi War. All honor to him, friend or foe, who fought and died for his nation. May the tragedy of his supreme sacrifice bring to us, the living, enlightenment and inspiration. Fill us with ever-mounting zeal, for the all-compelling quest of peace. The Tomb of the Unknown Warrior was a monument dedicated to the shinobi who have died without their remains being identified. Throughout history, many shinobi have died in war with their remains being unidentified. This was in dedication to the services of an unknown shinobi and to the common memories of all shinobi killed in any war. However, to Naruto, the monument contained the crypt of Namikaze Hanako. And resting on top of her coffin, a single head protector with the leaf symbol. Madara's head protector for the days he belonged to the Leaf Village. Sensei, Naruto heard a familiar voice. I figured I would find you here. Naruto turned around to look at one of the students belonging to his old 3-man genin cell. Sasuke, along with his son, Madara, and a civilian-born Kunoichi were his genin team. Sasuke-kun, Naruto smiled. Sasuke walked until he stood next to him. He gave a small bow to the monument, and turned towards Naruto. They are looking for you. The other Kages are already here, Sasuke said, and Naruto nodded. Thank for telling me. I'll be there in a moment, Naruto replied and Sasuke nodded, walking off. Uchiha Sasuke. Only son of Itachi and now Uchiha. Sasuke had black eyes as well as black hair with a blue tint to it. His hair was spiky in the back, and he had chin-length bangs that parted down to frame both sides of his face. He was almost a carbon copy of Itachi's deceased younger brother with the exception he had the same pronounced teardrops as Itachi. Naruto stifled a yawn and bowed to the monument before disappearing in a yellow flash. Kage Tower, Shadow Tower, Naruto appeared in the middle of his office. The office looked exactly the same as it was since he left it in the morning. His eyes roamed through the room that had an easy similarity to the Hokage's office back in Konoha. A simple wooden desk in the middle of the room, this one completely deprived of paperwork. Naruto could dispatch of his daily work in a couple of hours with a few clones so that he could spend his time on other things. Behind the desk were 4 large windows, giving him an overview of the entire city. Since the Shadow Tower was the tallest of all buildings, Naruto could see up to the edge of gates from his office. He sat down on the chair, getting almost a nostalgic feeling when the chair shrieked under his weight. On the desk stood a couple of pictures. A picture of his wedding with Hinata. He had worn a simple black kimono while Hinata had garbed an elegant white kimono with purple streaks. She was clutching to Naruto's arms lovingly, a beaming smile on her face while Naruto was grinning. The last picture on the desk was a similar picture but with both his sons. It was the day they had finally graduated from the academy and entered into the ranks of shinobi as genin. Madara and Ria were fist-bumping with shit-eating grins plastered across their faces. Naruto and Hinata simply stood behind them, their hands on top of their sons' shoulders. I think I'll miss this, Naruto muttered out loud and got up, the chair complaining once more. Kurama, you coming? Naruto asked with the fox lying on the floor, nuzzled next to the couch. Later, Kurama mumbled, rolling to the other side and proceeding to continue his nap. All you do is sleep, Naruto muttered and walked outside. He opened the door and with one final look back, he closed it behind him. Kage meeting. How come the guy that lives here is late? Ren asked once she saw the blonde walking through the door. I'm an old man, Ren-chan. Have some mercy. Naruto chuckled until he saw Ren's eyes twitch. We are the same age. Are you calling me old? Ren asked very sweetly. Of course not. Naruto paled. You are but a flower in the spring of youth. Naruto replied and sighed in relief when he saw Ren nod in agreement. And while Naruto was already immortal, the world around him couldn't know. For that reason, both he, Hinata and a couple others were employing a small transformation to make them seem older. Naruto's face was showing a few wrinkles and even his hair already supported a few white strands of hair. Naruto sat down on his chair and eyed the room. It sure looked very different from the first Kage meeting he attended, all those years ago. Rengushiken, Yondame Tsuchikage. Darui, Godame Reikage. Chojuro, Rokudame Mizukage. Baki, Godame Kazakage. Sarutobi Konohamaru, Nenadame Hokage. Waraji, Mifyune's son and leader of samurai. Shibuki, the Kage from Takigakure, Hidden Waterfall Village. Kyuzugakure, Yugakure, Hashigakure, Yumgakure, Ishigakure among several others villages. With the new United Nations system, every village, no matter how big or small, had a representative, being its very leader or a spokesman. There were around 20 people in the meeting, one that happened twice a year unless someone called for one. So, are you gonna tell us the reason this meeting couldn't wait one more month for the scheduled one? Darui asked, leaning back on the chair. This may come as sudden, but I called this meeting to say I'm stepping down, Naruto said, and a silence ensued. Moments later the room erupted in a multitude of questions. Naruto raised his hand and the room quieted down, waiting for his words. I've held my seat for 28 years. I think it's time for some fresh leadership. As such, I've chosen Uchiha Sasuke, my former student, to take my place. I'll be teaching Sasuke to handle the city for the next couple of years until he's ready. Naruto explained, but everybody remained silent. But why? Ren whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. I have things I need to do before my death. The city will be in capable hands, Naruto replied, assuring the leaders at the table. I expect that Sasuke will be taking my place at the next meeting, Naruto said and stepped out of the room, leaving everyone bewildered. A few weeks later, Orochimaru was found dead by Jiraiya's spies. The cause of death was declared as accidental jutsu. Around 40 years later, he was called many names. Demon, monster, fox, thunder god, hero, god of the shinobi, the one above all, savior of this world, but I think the names he would be most proud of would be leader, teacher, husband, father, friend. This is the funeral of Otsutsuki Naruto, the Shodaime Kage, first shadow, Sasuke said, looking at the ocean of people standing in front of him. Thousands of people had come to Naruto's burial. They came to thank the man that had changed the world. Overlooking the funeral, standing on top of the shadow tower, stood one very alive Naruto with Hinata by his side. All the signs of age Naruto bore were gone, and were replaced by a young face. Naruto turned to his wife only to see her crying. "Why so many tears?" Naruto asked softly, wrapping his arms around Hinata and burying her head in his chest. It's just," Hinata sobbed. "I feel like we are abandoning them." "I know," Naruto whispered, gently squeezing her. "But they made their choice. Besides, they have families of their own now." "You knew this was coming," Naruto said, brushing her tears away. "I know," she replied softly. "Are you ready?" Naruto asked, and she nodded. Both Naruto and Hinata jumped on top of Silver. "Let's go!" Silver stretched his massive wings and unleashed a loud roar before taking to the skies. The story of Otsutsuki Naruto may be over, but the story of the Eternal Guardians was just beginning.